Is this on? Is this on? I think it's on. OBS seems to think that it's on. Hi! Haven't done this in a little while, have we? Unless you count the 999 one. Aiden! Hello, hello, hello. And yeah, how are you doing, Aiden? How are you doing, Orville? We have not had one of these, what do you say when you lost your... Okay, that's a great one, Orville. What do you say when you lost 25% of your roof? Oof. That's so true. Because you know how expensive roofs are to replace? Orville, that was brilliant. That was so good. You're doing good? That's good. That's good. I'm glad that you're doing well. I'm doing all right myself. I am excited for tonight, but I also have to admit that I am quite nervous. Gee, how do I see? Because see, how do I put this? So, I guess I don't really know where to start, really. Okay, so y'all remember that one fanfic I read on Halloween last year? Well, this the one I want to read now is actually written by the same person way back when. And I think it's an important story to share for quite a few reasons. It's... How do I explain this? So... Don't remind you about that. Sorry, Aiden. I think I'm gonna have to. Because it's relevant. It's relevant in the sense that it's written by the same person. So... This story? I mean, I don't want to say single-handedly, but it was rather instrumental in, I guess, making the advanced shipping community what it was and has been. You know what I mean? It was kind of like the, not Rosetta Stone. That is definitely not the right word. It's like, I guess the closest thing I can say is like the spark, you know, kind of the spark that's kind of started a lot of people's enthusiasm for it. Me included, kind of. Or rather, I guess it didn't really start it, but it did like enable it significantly. And, you know, it inspired some of my own works, you know, so like something that important to at least my pedigree as a writer myself should be shared. But what makes me nervous though is that this fanfic is old, and by old I mean like 19 years old approximately, or like it's gonna be 19 years old this year. Think about that for a minute. Just think about that for a minute. And not only that, it was also their first fanfic. And I do have to say, boy, does it read like it. So, you know, it has aged quite a bit. So as you can imagine, I'm a little bit, as someone with really high standards when it comes to like writing and all that, I'm a little bit nervous because I don't know how people are gonna take it. You know what I mean? Also, two vegans fight. Do they have beef? Yes, they do. But then if that's the case, are they really vegan? trying to drag yourself to go to stream, but you're tired, and then you went live. I was like, maybe tomorrow. No. Oh man. So missing an Aiden stream because of me. Wow, I'm a monster. You were 9 when that came out. I was 16. Notably though, I read it. So it was already like 2 years old when I'd started reading it though. I didn't become an advanced shipper until Brawl. And by Brawl, I mean Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Yes, that is actually what introduced me to Pokemon ships was Brawl. Me wanting to play at least semi-competitively with Link brought me to this forum that introduced me to someone who is, you know, kind of like my mentor and all that, and they introduced me to a video series that made a joke about shipping that made me think like, wait a minute, I actually kind of like this, which made me look up stuff about it on Bulbapedia and made me think, oh, okay, there's this other ship that might is there this other ship that might be a thing, and it turns out that it was, and not only that, it turned out to be quite popular, and then the rest is history. So you can actually thank Smash for all this at the end of the day. You sucked at it. I mean, I was decent, I guess. I didn't really play competitively like I do with Ultimate, but I did play it semi-competitively. Like, I still played it tryhard, you know? And I played one of the worst characters in the game against my, you know, my better judgment. But hey, listen. When you have a love for the character, and you can make people surprised just like how well you can make him perform and all that, just seeing the surprise looks on their faces, it makes it worthwhile, you know? It makes it all worthwhile. It's gonna be a boring stream. Ah, listen, Aiden. No, you can't say that. Can't say that. Just purifying more shadow mods. What do you mean? That's Pokemon Coliseum though. /XD. I'm actually it's one of those two games. Unless it's Pokemon Go, but I doubt it's Pokemon Go. But how could any of those be boring? It's Pokemon. It's Pokemon Coliseum /XD. Your main is DK and Rob, but you suck at the game. Yeah. Trying to forget how good Rob was. I know Rob's really good at Ultimate, but I don't think he was quite that good in Brawlish. He was a pretty big target. Coliseum XD is next. Gotcha. Okay, so I was close. I'm actually watching videos of a top Pokemon Coliseum speedrunner talk about the game, and it's actually quite interesting. Their videos are informative. I want to see more of them when they come out, but I think I already watched all of them. Kind of a new channel. You're just repeatedly going through Mount Battles, spamming Shadow Rush. Oh yeah, I think it also I think the speed at which you can purify also varies on the type of Pokemon, like their nature and all that stuff too, which is quite interesting. All right, but yes. Anyway, so I guess going back on topic though. So yes, so. When it comes to my pedigree as a writer, this story is rather important. But it is also, reading through this again, it has, I did have a bit of a hard time going back to reading it though. It has shown its age quite a bit. So I'm not actually sure how people are going to take it. I don't know how good I'm going to make it sound. I want it to sound as great as possible. But I feel like I can only do so much without either one, rewriting it like I did with that other story, or two, running it through ChatGPT to have it do it for me and make the process a lot easier. But the first option takes way too much brain power and time out of me. It's stuff that I could be using for my own writings, and the other one, it just seems like that would just be kind of dishonest, and I want this to be kind of as authentic as possible. You know what I mean? And yes, it is a Big Mochi streaming, Yubi. I'm doing great, Yubi. How about you? Just a regular playthrough, but still, hey, let's, hey. That's right. I need to watch it. I like watching people do Pokemon playthroughs. Still starting screens, screen. Yeah, I know. It's I haven't changed screens yet. I'm just sort of explaining myself. About like what I'm going to be doing and how nervous I am to actually do it. Because I gotta tell you, I have huge. I have exceedingly high standards when it comes to writing, which might become quite self-evident once I show some of my own stuff off. Which actually brings me to the third thing why I think this is important to share. So, this story also had a sequel that ended up being unfinished. But then I came along and finished it myself. So, my hope is that... Okay, so some of it is... So some of the motivation is selfish on my part. Because I get to show you this, and also it'll give me a good excuse to show you show off some of the stuff that I've written. And I'm not trying to toot my horn or anything, but I think I did... I don't know, I think the quality of my writing is significantly higher. Now, granted, remember, I'm comparing my, like, 2019 self to someone's 2006 self / 2008 self. So, you know, it's not even a fair comparison. But it's, you know, there's still that. Original Mochi stories coming soon. Well, there might even be one tonight. Because who knows? Because I gotta be honest though, I don't know if I'm going to need a bit of a palate cleanser. Yeah, I know. I know it really sounds like I'm tooting my own horn by saying that. Oh yeah, here's a palate cleanser. Here's something that I wrote, but no, that's not really what I'm trying to get at here. I also don't really want to overhype this as being like poorly written either, but it's like you could definitely tell it's aged and it was written as someone's first fanfic. You can kind of tell. I will do my best to try to hide that, but I can only go so far, I think. Mochi, no! Mochi, yes! And yeah, rip PSL for now. Yeah, that is true, Stormblight. I did see the news there. The Inkslingers know about that. It's actually the Inkslingers that told me about it, or that made me aware of it. So, yeah. All right. Okay. So I think I've droned on long enough here. I think I might have maybe overhyped this or like scared everyone long enough. So let's get this started, shall we? So I actually forgot that I also want to bring up this Unity project as well. Because so much like with Behind a Mask, I have read through, well, the vast majority of it and created a soundtrack of sorts. Which I will be playing to add up to the atmosphere, and hopefully that'll help. That'll help as well. Okay, so let's switch scenes here. Okay. So, here we are. We have... Gather around the fire, everybody. Yeah. Adding to the adding to the ambiance. Indeed. Oh, oops. Okay. And as always, since this is a Pokemon fanfic, I gotta start with the Parasail minigame song from Breath of the Wild, man. For some reason, this reminds me of Pokemon, the Pokemon anime. I don't know why, but it's perfect. All right. Okay, I hope the volume mixing is okay. This may be a little bit mixed in quality because a lot of songs have different volumes and all that, and yeah, so. Okay. All right, okay, any minute now, Mochi, any minute now. Okay, this is gonna be about 16 minutes. I imagine maybe I'll get through 3 chapters in an hour, but we'll have to see. So, okay, actually, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to also set a stopwatch. So that I have a pretty good idea of like how long it's gonna take to read a chapter. All right, here we go. All right, Maze Crush by PikamasterADV. Let us go, everybody. The sun was shining brightly over the Kanto region. The sky was a clear blue, not a single cloud. 4 travelers marched on in the cool shade of a cliff face in spite of the late afternoon humidity. Clear sky didn't stop a certain brown-haired girl from getting her head in the clouds, however. Come on, May, try to keep up. May was brought out of her daydream by a boy calling out to her from further up the road. She looked up to see this boy with a yellow Pokemon sitting on his shoulder. Next to him was her brother, staring down at her from behind her glasses. A close friend of theirs, whom they were also traveling with, had a concerned look on his older face. The group was stopped about 10 yards ahead of her, all of them staring in her direction. Honestly, the boy in the red hat complained as he approached her with Pikachu sitting on his shoulder. You've been a space case ever since the end of the Grand Festival. What's up? Oh, it's nothing, May assured him, not making contact with his auburn eyes. She'd always been a terrible liar, especially to her friends. Not looking into his calming eyes makes this easier, she thought. She instead decided to focus on his blue sweatshirt, his baggy jeans, strong arms. She refocused her thoughts on his Pikachu. He beamed a smile at her face with large dark eyes. The red patches on his face concealed a massive electric charge, and bright yellow fur and a lightning bolt-shaped tail, and hello, Earth to May. The boy who owned the Pikachu waved his hand, clad in black fingerless gloves in front of her face, and snapped his fingers. Are you feeling all right? He said as he looked in her large sapphire-colored eyes. Oh, I'm fine, Ash. May waved her white-gloved hand in front of him in an attempt to shoo him off. She turned away from him and looked up at the cliff. I guess I just feel like I'm being followed, I guess. Her brother walked closer to her, knowing that there was more to this than she let on. I think you're hiding something, May. What is it this time? Did you waste all of your money again? Of course not, she retorted to her dark-haired brother. How irresponsible do you think I am? Adjusting his glasses and smiling, he knows she just took the bait. Oh, I'd say very. Remember the time your Bulbasaur was eating things and getting lost in trucks back in Hoenn? Ash knew where this was headed, so while May and her brother argued with each other, he approached his older friend, who had instead focused his narrow eyes on a small yellow device. He pressed its buttons, growled when the outcome wasn't what he wanted, pressed more buttons, and then let out a sigh when he finally got it to work properly. Did you figure out how to work it, Brock? He asked his friend. Brock furrowed his eyebrows. He reached into his pocket in his brown cargo pants and put out the manual for the small device. The word Pokénav was written in small letters on the front. This stuff is just too hard for me to read, he explained. I figured I'd just play around with it until I figured it out. He then sighed. This is just like video games. I'm simply no good. His look returned to cheerful after a few moments, however. I did, though, get it to display the map. Well, that's good. Ash said, smiling. Are we gonna reach a Pokemon Center before nightfall? I think May and Max are gonna need to take a long sleep after this one. Rock furrowed his eyebrows. Oh wait, I already read that. I already read that. Don't know why. All right. Rock focuses gaze on the LCD on the Pokénav and hitting a few buttons with a cracked smile. There is a Pokemon Center not far from here. We should be able to see it soon. Okay, and this is an opportunity, and this is the part where actually I probably should have queued up some extra music. So I have all the music in separate tabs. Okay, so it's gonna be a little bit. It's gonna be there's gonna be some awkward pauses as I switch tunes. Aha! I knew it! His brother Max exclaimed. Ash and Rock looked over to see Max pointing at his sister's blushing face. Take that back! May screamed at him. She clenched her gloved fist and was about to, clearly about to punch him. He quickly turned his green sneakers and racked back towards Ash and Brock, ducking behind Brock's leg. The older man stepped up, clearly to protect Max from his raging sister. Whoa, what's up now? He said, trying to mediate. Yeah, May, Ash turned over. What's up? Before she could say, Max interrupted. May's got a crush on a boy! With that, May's face turned deep red, almost the same shade as the tights of a blouse that she was wearing. Max! She screamed, you're gonna get it this time! She lunged at him, but Ash fortunately was there to restrain her by holding her arms from behind, with Pikachu pulling on her red bandana for good measure. Rock stood in between Max and his face. Oh my god, okay, that's just a repeat sentence, see what I mean? Okay. If Ash and Brock weren't here, you'd be dead, she growled to her diminutive sibling. Well, if Ash and Brock weren't around, would you have met your boyfriend? He taunted her back. Ash was just about to give in and let the girl tear her younger brother apart when he heard a familiar voice calling from atop the cliff they were traveling next to. I thought that screaming was familiar. They said, looming over the cliff. A boy clad in green hair. Who's that? Ash said, turning him. Wait, isn't that Drew? Max said, adjusting his glasses. May's disposition then changed from anger to surprise as she looked up to see her rival looking down at her and her friends. His purple jacket was hanging open, exposing his black shirt and slim physique. It is Drew, she exclaimed. Hey, what are you doing out here? The Red Festival's over. I thought you'd have gone back to Hoenn by now. I decided to train in Kanto some more before I head back, he told her, flicking his hair in a showboating manner. What are you all doing? Ash is going to the battle pyramid, and we're going with him, May replied, indicating Ash by pointing at the young trader, to which he, waved. Wasn't that guy with the Roselia? Yes, it was. That is, you are correct, sir. Now I can at least say that there aren't really a whole lot of plot twists that you're probably going to be able to guess. So, so that is one thing that I can take solace in trying, take solace in. Gen 3 anime was so good. I know, right? I need to just like find a way to watch all of it that it doesn't involve like Twitch watches, because that's actually how I watched the majority of the anime. Was through Twitch watches back when Twitch is doing the showing of it. And I was like, oh my god, I have to watch all of this. And I did watch most of it, or at least a good portion of it. And boy, was it magical. Anyway. All right, kind of lost my place here. Oh, really? Drew asked with a smirk on his face in response to, May saying that they were going to the battle pyramid. His green eye, the spark made his green eyes appear to glow. Mind if I travel with you guys as far as the Pokemon Center? It's close by and I'm staying the night there. But yes, of course, May said, bubbling. And she realized that she was in front of the rest of her friends and, well, she probably had to rethink, her. She had to backtrack a little bit. I mean, if you guys don't mind. I don't mind, Ash said with a smile. The more the merrier, as they say, Rock added. Okay. Now I have to switch songs again. Wait, that's the Sheikah Tower. Oops. After getting down from the cliff, Drew, along with May and her friends, began walking to the Pokemon Center as, you know, they decided. Drew asked May what training she had been doing since the Grand Festival, and all she could do was really shrug the question off and try to talk about other things. Well, before she could change the subject, Brock asked him what kind of foods he was feeding his Pokemon, noting that at the Grand Festival, they all looked remarkably healthy. Max walked up to Drew and commented on his excellent battle with May, to which Drew thanked the young boy, only to have his ego be immediately deflated by being told that May was awesome and had completely outclassed him. Meanwhile, Ash found himself glancing backwards at May, who was focused on Drew, who had already made himself the center of attention. He looked at her red tennis shoes, and his eyes followed past her short black socks up her smooth legs to where her black shorts and a short white skirt intermingled to give the impression that she, while liked to show off her body, was also quite modest. His eyes continued upward to her pack that hanged on her white hips and helped accentuate her hourglass appearance. He gazed upon the curves of her body until he found himself looking at her chest. Ash stared for only a moment before he realized what he was doing. He immediately turned his head around and focused on the road ahead of him, berating himself for looking at a girl, much less a close friend of his, in such an objectifying way. He blushed slightly, hoping no one took notice of what had just transpired. Unfortunately for him, Pikachu had noticed him. Concerned, he tugged on Ash's unkept black hair in an attempt to grab his attention. Hey, you still feel so bad about that? No, Aiden, you shouldn't feel bad about that. You shouldn't feel bad about that. It was honestly really amusing. like seriously, it was just entertaining, man. But hey, don't worry, there's gonna be more stuff that I bet you're not gonna guess unless, you know, I did some horrible writing, I guess, because when we actually get to my part, which is going to be in like, I don't know, 10 million years, we'll see. Okay, so the first story here is like 35 chapters. So like 135,000 words. So that's about like, so it's about 12,000 words per hour, approximately. So I guess maybe like 10 hours. And then the sequel is like also 36, not including the ones that I wrote, or like the chapters that I wrote. So, you know, it's gonna be a while, but you know. It was a phenomenal story though, for real. Well, PikamasterADV thanks you, and also I thank you because I also did do a significant amount of rewriting in there. And I ended up doubling it in length. Oh boy. Anyway, enough about me. We're going back to this. Okay. So this part's gonna be a little bit hard to improvise. Okay. Nothing's wrong, Pikachu. Ash smiled, lying to his longtime friend. Pikachu then sighed and vocalized his concern with a few coos and pikas of his own. Ash shook his head and sighed, knowing that he had been read like a book so thoroughly. I don't know, Pikachu. Ash's face went from a false grin to a grimace. I guess I never really thought of May and Drew like that before. Max said she's got a crush on someone, and she's happy to see Drew. His little buddy continued to speak, as though he was meaning to say something like, "Do you think you're being a little overprotective, Ash?" Ash's heart leapt into his throat. Even though he couldn't understand what Piku had just said, he knew his Pokemon had hit the nail on the head. Oh, wait. Sorry, I read ahead a little bit. Don't you think you're being a little overprotective, Ash? And he says, "So what if I am?" He grunted quietly, so only Pikachu could hear him. "You like her, don't you?" Pikachu, quote-unquote, said as he cocked his head to the side. Ash's heart leapt into his throat. Even though he couldn't understand what Pikachu had just said, he knew his Pokemon had hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I do. He cringed at the thought of Pikachu's response. So instead of laughing like he thought he would, Pikachu licked his face, causing him to look up the Electro-type again. You knew? He asked Pikachu, and to which he nodded. How'd you figure it out? Pikachu returned him a knowing look. Yeah, I guess given as close as we are, you know all about my secret, don't you, buddy? Cha! He cooed as Ash rubbed his head. But what am I supposed to do about it? He asked him thinking. Pikachu got his attention and made some aggressive poses. Which got the gears in his brain a-turning, it seems. You're right. It's do or die time. I have to do something about it. I'll try to find the perfect time tonight. Thanks, buddy. You're right behind Pikachu's ears again, and thanks. Is that day? Yes, it is day. Okay. The five arrived at the Pokemon... before long, the five arrived at the Pokemon Center. Ash, May, Brock, and Drew walked up to the desk and rang the bell. It was relatively empty, but that could be understood, because given that this particular center was quite a ways out of the way and in the boonies. They waited there only a moment or two before the door behind the desk opened up, revealing a man in doctor's scrubs. Dark red hair under his cap floated over his sharp blue eyes. A mask hung over his shoulders, and a smile grew on his face as he approached the children. Welcome to our Pokemon Center, he greeted. How may I assist you? No offense, Ash started, but I was expecting a Nurse Joy. I'm not surprised, the man sighed in response. What do you mean? May asked him. What's your name? I'm Dr. Joseph, and I run this Pokemon Center along with my partner Skarmory. The mention of her name. Joseph Skarmory waddled through the door he came out of. Its shrill voice made Ash and his friends cringe. You mean there's no Joy? Brock cried to himself. Are you even related to any of the Joys? Of course I am, he said, standing up for himself. I am the younger brother of the Joy who works in the Pelborg City in the Hoenn region, in fact. Oh! He said, starting to introduce... she said with a start. My little brother Max and I are from Pelborg City. Oh, are you little man Max, the children of the Pelborg gym leader? He asked, his eyes sparkling. Yeah, have you heard about us? My sister talks about your father all the time, Joseph explained. And she says that Norman's always talking about his children, saying that he went on a journey with a great Pokemon trainer. After he said this, Ash stepped up with a knowing smile on his face. I believe his name was Alf, Joseph said, smiling, and Ash sighed as a depressed look came over his face. Actually, Ash said, correcting, my name is Ash. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, anyway, can I help you folks? Ash and May then left their Pokemon with the doctor, except for Pikachu, and then went with Max to get some dinner. Hey, Drew, Brock asked him after leaving his own Pokemon with the doctor. Are you hungry? Max and I are gonna go follow Ash and May to see if they're gonna leave anything for us to eat. Drew, for his part, shook his head. Nah, I think I'll do a little more training. May's yelling earlier kind of distracted me. All right, suit yourself, Brock said with a shrug. See you around, Drew. Oh, I wouldn't count on that, Drew thought to himself. He hadn't really been training. Joe had been trailing May and her friends since he saw them pass a few days ago. He had already acknowledged himself that he liked May, and he had overheard that May had a crush on some boy. Given that he had been continuously dropping hints of the contest they'd competed in, he thought it was a safe bet that the crush was him. He knew that this was his chance. He was done laying hints. This time he was going to ask May if she would like to travel with him. Okay, that was 17 minutes. Okay, the first lap was about 17 minutes. Okay, so a little bit at the high end. So it's Firefox did estimate this would take about 16 minutes on the high end. So, you know, this is pretty good so far. All right, chapter 2, Confession. Actually, I should probably state the first chapter's name is called Confidential. The second one is Confession. You might already starting to notice you might start to be noticing a little bit of a motif here, a little bit. No, that is a plot twist, though. You're remembering the anime, you can kind of see that. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it a plot twist per se. I mean, I guess it's a twist in the sense that you know, he's taking initiative now. And, you know, it's adding another layer, you know, another wrinkle to this whole thing. Because, you know, this title does say May's crush, but it doesn't specify who. But yeah. Okay. Anyway. Chapter 2. Confession. Assuming I can get this song to play. YouTube is gonna be a little spookoid. There we go. After dinner, May went outside and sat out in the cool grass. Ash was out training IPOM, the newest addition to his team, on the other side of the center, and Brock and Max had left to go buy supplies from a mom-and-pop general store nearby. May spread her legs apart and prop herself up by placing her hands on the ground behind her. She gazed at the round full moon. How did Max figure it out, she thought. She tried to remember how the conversation had even gone in that direction earlier that day. All that stuff was a long time ago, Max, she retorted her brother's accusation from earlier. Besides, I'm a much better trainer now. Well, there's been lots of people helping you, Max responded. May knew this as well as anyone. Yeah, Ash has been there since the beginning, and Drew's really helped me in my contests. Then there's been a lot of my other contest opponents. I probably even learned something from Harley. Even Harley? Max said, surprised. Yeah, but he's not near the top of who I would consider the most influential. Well, then, who is? Asked her. Probably Ash and Drew, she said with a blush. It probably annoys no one else can. Do you like either of them? Max asked her sister. What? She was surprised. She could feel her face turn crimson. I bet you have a crush on one of them, he accused her. No, I don't! She cried as she blushed even more fervently. I knew it, Max exclaimed. I saw out of the corner of her eye that this comment had gotten Ash's attention. Yeah, hardly. I know, right? God, I'm so glad that you're here, Aiden. Of all the people to show up, you were the one I was most hoping to show up. I have to say, because I knew you would. I knew you would add so much more additional context here. Anyway, May sighed again, gazing at the full moon. The night was cool, and a gentle breeze blew through her brown hair and flickered under her face. She brushed away and saw the shrubs in the nearby forest moving. She saw something yellow come out of the bush, and then saw that it was Ash's Pikachu had seen her sitting alone in the grass and had begun running up to her. Oh no, what if Ash is following him, she thought. Pikachu walked up to her and stared before vocalizing something what seemed to be a question of sorts. Hi, Pikachu, she said hesitantly. Is Ash following you? Pikachu, he said, shaking his head. Did you sneak off during training? He asked him. In response, Pikachu widened his face, pulled his ears down, and put on a big toothy grin. He's doing a lot of training with IPOM, isn't he? May responded, recognizing the Pokemon Pikachu was imitating. Pikachu nodded in response, and then leapt into May's lap. Though this time May wasn't startled. It seemed like Pikachu was always spending time with her when he wasn't with Ash, which she found pleasantly surprising. She rubbed behind his ears just as she'd asked to. And she smiled as she heard his coo under her gentle touch. Before long, she stopped and looked at Pikachu, and Pikachu turned around and lowered his ears. Asking her what seemed to be another question. You know I'm feeling down, don't you? She asked rhetorically. I was just thinking about you, Pikachu, and how you seem as comfortable around me as you do Ash. Pikachu responded in the affirmative. But I also remember how sometimes when you weren't with Ash, how you'd go out of your way to sit with me or on my head. Pikachu then laughed, embarrassed. Well, May smiled, knowing that Pikachu just fell in her trap. They say Pokemon take on the personalities of their trainers as well as likes and dislikes. Pikachu choked. Even he could see where this is going now. Well, I just wanted to ask you. And with that, May lowered her head close to Pikachu's ear and whispered, Do you know if Ash likes me? Thinking quickly, Pikachu decided to play dumb. Pika! He said rather obliviously. As though to say, of course he likes you, you're good friends. May knew Ash, and she knew Pikachu would try to weasel out just like Ash would. Oh no, you know what I meant, she said, chastising him. I meant, does he have a crush on me? Pikachu, flabbergasted, thought about how Ash had instructed him earlier that night. Okay, Pikachu, I want you to spy on May for me. Pika, for his part, let out a very displeased sound and gave him a look that seemed to indicate that, almost a level of disgust. Not like that. It's not like that, Pikachu. Ash reassured him. I meant I want you to go and see what kind of mood she's in and see if she's with anyone else. You can sit in her lap and try to get her to talk to you and stuff. Not like hiding in the bushes like some kind of G.I. Jenny or something like that. Pikachu looked confused and seemed to ask him, why not? Because if she sees you, she might think of me, Ash said, blushing slightly. I want you to try to learn if she likes me back. And this admission only made his blush deepen. All right, Pikachu responded, but how will I change the subject if she does bring you up? Just hop in her head, Ash responded. That should distract her from asking about me again. And remember, make sure she doesn't learn that I like her from you. I don't think she'd think kindly of me sending you to spy on her. All right, Pika! Pikachu raised his hand in the air as if to support Ash's plan. Thanks, buddy. I knew I could count on you. Ash then picked him up and snuggled him in his arms before setting him down to go find May. Now, I gotta do some training, he said, turning. He reached alongside his belt, pulled out a Pokeball. Ipom, I choose you, he called out as he tossed it into the air. Pikachu, remembering the instructions, leapt onto May's head. Hey, May said, laughing. What are you trying to do, Pikachu? May rocked her head forward, trying to get Pikachu to slip off. The plan did work, as Pikachu came tumbling down in front of her. His feet landed at her chest and caused Pikachu to bounce into the ground flat on his back. Crying a little bit after feeling the impact. May picked Pikachu up and held him. Are you okay, Pikachu? May asked. Pikachu put his hand behind his head in an embarrassed sort of way and chortled a little bit. But just then his ears perked up and his expression changed to serious. May was confused. Is someone there? May, is that you? The voice of Drew called out to her. Pika! Pikachu cried. He scored out of May's grasp and ran past Drew, who was approaching May, to go tell Ash of who had just shown up. Drew eyed Pikachu as he scampered away. Quickly put the pot out. Well, he quickly put the thought out of his mind and turned the girl sitting in front of him. So, how have you been? He asked her. Drew, it hasn't even been that long since the Grand Festival, remember? May said, standing up to face him. I'm fine, just like I was then. Drew coughed. Anyway, I came out here to find you because there's something I wanted to tell you. May was cut off by Drew presenting a rose to her. I'm in love with you, May, he told her. May blushed heavily and gently took the rose from his hand. I don't know what to say, she said, stammering, surprised that Drew would be so direct with her so quickly. Well, don't say anything yet, he advised her. I also have a request. He looked into her eyes, thickening her blush when she noticed. I would like it very much if you stopped journeying with Ash and came along with me instead. What? May's eyes widened as she heard the request, dropping the rose on the ground in surprise. What about Max? Where will he go? Drew looked in her large sapphire eyes calmly, confidently. We can talk about that later. I'm not expecting an answer tonight, he explained. This is a lot to take in, I admit, and I want to give you a night to think about it. I know you care a lot about your friends, and I wanted you to do what would really make you happy. May could only stand stunned as Drew turned from her. I'm going to bed now, he said. I'll hang around the center until noon. I'll be expecting your answer before then. And then he coolly walked off. Not long after, she heard the doors of the center open and close. She fell to the ground, her knees landing there first, stunned at what had just occurred. Drew is in love with me? She said. She thought timidly to herself. Meanwhile, On the other side of the center, bubbles and stars clashed together on the outskirts of the nearby forest, creating explosions. These explosions brought small flashes brightening up the sky for but moments. When the air cleared, a tired Ipom was panting as Ash's Chlorfish lunged at it with a glowing claw. Ipom! Ash cried to it. Dodge that crab hammer! Hey! The first Armong leaned back and bounced up using her tail. Chlorfish brought his claw down to the ground, missing Ipom completely. Now focus punch! Ipom cried as her tail was then enveloped in a bright glow. And shouted as she swung her tail into the crustacean, sending him flying against a tree. Car. Ash's water-type Wheezy sank into the grass, knocked out. Alright, well, only 45 seconds of that song playing. You did a great job, Corfish. Return. And yes, you are right, Aiden. Pikachu is the worst wingman ever. the worst wingman ever. Hey, that's why we love him so much, right? In so doing, he recalled the crayfish Pokemon back into his Pokeball. Then turned to Ipom and said, "And you were awesome too, Ipom. Return." And he said it as he held up her ball and recalled her also. Pikachu! Ash called to Ash as he ran up to his trainer. Pikachu! Ash turned to pick up his partner. How'd it go? Did you learn anything? Pikachu, and almost in a panic, leapt out of Ash's grip and pulled his ears down to the side of his head. His eyes got sparkly and he cooed in a minute. Cha! So you really think May likes me? Ash said excitedly as he blushed. Pika, he nodded. Well, let's go talk to her then. Ash was about to run off before Pika ran up in front of him and halted him. He pulled his ears down in front of his eyes and flicked them and said, "Pee," in a stuck-up way. What? Ash was surprised. You mean Drew was talking to her? Let's go, we don't have time to waste. Ash then took off after Pikachu left on his shoulder and ran behind the Pokemon Center to where he knew May was, just as Drew had left her to return to his room. May! Ash called to her from behind the bushes. He stepped out and saw her sitting alone on the ground. Where did that Drew go, he thought. He walked up to her and extended his hand to help her to her feet. Are you all right? May, seeing Ash here, quickly hit her memory of what just happened between her and Drew. Yeah, I was just surprised is all. What surprised you? May quickly changed the subject. So, how did your training with Apom go? She asked him. It went great, Ash beams, immediately forgetting what the subject was beforehand. Apom did really great in battle with Corfish. She's a really strong Pokemon. Ash then trailed off, looking into May's eyes, and saw those glittering sapphire auras reflect the moonlight. The pale glow of the moon made her skin glow, and the sun on her face of genuine friendship made his heart beat faster. Ash, are you okay? Okay, hold on. Oh, here we go. Found the tab. Yeah, Ash, are you okay? May asked him as a faint flush came over Ash's face. This is it, he thought. Do or die. May, I think I'm... Ash started to stammer, his face going redder as the sentence struggled to leave his lips. After untwisting his tongue for a moment, he did manage to push out the rest of the words through his teeth. I think I'm falling in love with you. May blushed when she heard that. Really? She asked. Defeated, Ash sat down on the grass, sighed, looking at the moon. Yeah, his heart beating a mile a minute. When did it happen? She asked, sitting down close, but not quite next to him. She noticed the rose that Drew had given her and immediately tried hiding it behind, putting it out of his sight so he didn't notice. You make it sound like there's something wrong with me, Ash scoffed, trying to hide the hurt in his voice. No, it's not like that, May assured him, moving her hand onto his. I really just want to know. Sorry if I hurt your feelings, besides squeezing his hand. A while ago, I guess, Ash thought out loud. I mean, we were always good friends, but I guess at some point it just felt like I was becoming something more, you know? Go on, she implored him, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. She liked romantic stories like this and would often read books about this kind of situation when she wasn't retraining for the next contest. Ash laid back in the grass. Pikachu, sitting next to him on the side May wasn't on, sat there thinking for a moment. Remember that island in Hoenn with the Dawn fan when Max got lost in the forest? You were so worried about it that you didn't take the ferry to Pacific Log. Ugh. I played Gen 3, I swear. When I saw how sad that made you, I realized there might be more to our friendship than I thought. I tried my best to comfort you because I wanted that bright smile of yours to return to that face of yours. Well, that was quite a long time ago, Ash, May said. Why are you just now telling me how you feel? When Max said you had a crush on somebody, I was just gonna brush it off, he said, eyes closed. But then that Drew guy showed up and you seemed so happy, so happy to see you. Ash clenched his fists. I guess this is the first time I ever felt like I had a chance of losing you. Ash then calmed himself. I mean, I thought that we'd have a longer time together before I'd have to say anything. I was just putting it off. I never thought anything about what was going on between you and Drew. I thought it was just friendly, but then with what Max said, first time I ever felt threatened about it. Ash, May whispered to herself. Then turned to her face. I know this probably came off as awkward. May corrective. Yeah, awkward. Anyway, I feel really mixed up inside now. He turned serious again. Pikachu and I are gonna camp outside. I don't feel like I'd be able to sleep if I was able to look at you. You don't have to tell me how you feel yet. Ash stood, walking toward the center's door. Whenever you feel like you're ready. He glanced back at her and caught a glimpse of the rose Drew gave her. But put the thought out of his mind and went inside the center to rest his Pokemon and get a sleeping bag. How much of my life was this system? I know, right, Aiden? You and I both! Ash and Drew, she said, starting to collect her thoughts. They're both in love with me, she said, squealing with joy. The thought of Drew presenting her with a beautiful bouquet of lush roses and Ash taking her hand for a romantic moonlight flight upon his Charizard made her heart flutter. May giggle like a young girl would had she been in her situation. But then reality had set in. Wait, hold on. But then reality had set in again. I can't keep them both, she told herself. It wouldn't be right to string them both along like that, and then they'd both end up hating me. Thought of Drew tossing her a dead, dry brown rose and Ash leaving her behind fluttered into her mind. She started to sniffle. How can I choose between them? She thought to herself. They've both been so wonderful to me. How can I choose to stay with one and shun the other? Ah, this is so hard! She cried out, tears running slowly out of her eyes. Why did they both have to tell me they loved me in the same day? Maybe I can help, a voice said to her from down the hall. She looked up from her lap and saw Brock walking down the hall. She knew that he could see the tears in her eyes. Yo, Mochi, we reading? Yes, we are, Mateo! How are you doing? Hi. We are reading an Advanceshipping fanfic. How are you doing, Mateo? Long time no see. If she doesn't pick Ash, I swear to God. I swear to Todd. Well, don't worry. Don't worry. She will. This is an Advanceshipping fic. So clearly she's gonna, but you know, it's about the journey, not the destination, you know? Oh, Brock, she sniffed, trying to hide her tears. Where were you? I was just reading a story to my little brothers and sister, he explained. My parents are doing great, but they still miss their big brother, it seems. Brock smiled wryly, hoping it would catch and May would smile back, but he saw in her eyes that she had been crying. Now, let me put my brothering skills to use, he said as he put his hand on her back. Why are you crying, May? He asked her, sitting down while holding a can of soda in his opposite hand. Yeah, I lost my place again. Oh, Brock, May said, letting the tears flow. She leaned over and sobbed pitifully into his lap. It's awful. I have to choose between two people who have done so much for me, and I can't. Okay, explain things from the beginning, and then we'll think about how to handle this. Thanks, Brock, she said, sniffling. Hey, that's what friends are for. No, I mean it, she said, rubbing the tears in her eyes. You're like the big brother I'd never had. I know I can talk to you, and you'll be there for me. Thank you. Brock, for his part, blushed with embarrassment. May went over the events of that evening, started with Pikachu's appearance, going to Drew's confession and proposition, and finally to Ash admitting his feelings for her, and the dialogue they had before he left. Brock was dumbstruck, Brock sat there dumbstruck when she had finished. Wow, I never even thought Ash was capable of that. Misty would be surprised. But I have to pick one now, she said, fighting him in like an older sibling. If I pick neither, then they'll be heartbroken. If I pick Ash, I may never see Drew again. And if I pick Drew, I'll lose out on being with you guys anymore. Ash would be destroyed. Rock sat there for a moment, sipping on a soft drink, immersed in thought. An idea popped into his head. Hey, May, you like romantic romance novels, right? May blushed with embarrassment. Well, I've always wanted to be in a romantic situation like that, she said, sighing, but what does that have to do with anything? I have an idea if you'll want to go along with it. That's chapter 2. Chapter 3! Confrontation. Also, I need to do another lap there, and that was 21 minutes. Yes, yeah, so chapter 3 of, we are now at chapter 3 of 35. Yeah, so it's, Missy would be beside herself, she knew how to escape a little bit. I know, right? She would be. She would be. Honestly. Honestly, it's crazy. It's crazy. All right, chapter 3, confrontation. The next morning, Drew rolled over in his bed and opened his eyes. He saw there was a piece of paper on the ground near the door that wasn't there when he went to sleep. He rubbed his green eyes to make sure he hadn't been seeing things. Once he confirmed its existence, Drew stepped over to it in his night clothes and picked it up to read it. No, he said through grinding teeth. He won't get away with this. Drew then immediately began getting dressed. Thoughts of Ash and Pikachu flooded his mind, and anger was his emotional response. He quickly got dressed, got his Pokeballs from the doctor, and ran out into the forest. Ash, meanwhile, tossed and turned in a sleeping bag, and his sleep tormented by nightmares. Ash found himself standing in a wide, grassy field, staring at May and Drew. May walked out to him. Ash, I decided to journey with Drew from now on, she told him, looking down. What? Why? Because you're such a loser, Ashy boy, Gary's voice said, coming out of Drew's mouth. Why would she want to hang out with you when she couldn't be with me? I'm sorry, Ash. Tears began to well up in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to be this way. No, he cried, reaching out for his Pokeballs, only to find out he didn't have any with him. Give it up, Ash, Gary Drew laughed. You stinky, you'll never be as good as I am. I beat you in the Johto League Silver Conference, Gary, Ash yelled back at him, and I'll do it again if you want me to prove it. Drew's expression changed. I've never been to Johto before, Ash, Drew said in his regular voice. Maybe that's where May and I will go next. Ash could only stand there stunned as May and Drew departed from him. Farewell, Ash. I'll never forget all that you've done for me, she said, calling back to him. Smell you later, Ash, Drew yelled, again in Gary's voice. Ash bolted awake from his nightmare in a cold sweat. He sat up in a sleeping bag and forced Pikachu to roll off. It was only a nightmare. Ash gave a sigh of relief. Hear the chirping of various Cantonian flying Pokemon. Fun fact, they use Cantonese for the Demonym. I think this was before the official Demonyms were released, so yeah, so I'm changing it to Cantonian. Aren't I clever? Not really. I don't know. The forest canopy held the direct sunlight from his eyes, but it was easily late morning. He turned to his belongings and saw a sack near his backpack with a note. Crawled over and read it. I'm taking the one you hold dear. If you want to see her again, you must battle me. I'll be waiting in the forest behind the Pokemon Center at 10 a.m. Your rival. P.S. Your Pokeballs are in your bag. You'll need them. Ash pictured Drew's face and crumbled the note at his fist. What is he gonna do to May, he thought. Images from his nightmare reemerged from his subconscious. Remember seeing Drew and May interact back in Hoenn, and he saw Gary and himself in those interactions. He remembered how Gary's words were like a dagger in his side. Whenever he thought he was doing well, Gary would show up and show just how far ahead of Ash he was. When he saw May trying to play catch up to Drew, Gary was the first thing to hit his mind. Even after defeating Gary and his Blastoise in the Silver Conference, even after putting their rivalry behind him, even after they departed as friends, Ash still remembered how insulting and harsh he was in his first journey through Kanto, and part of that memory would always be with him. He roused Pikachu, collected his Pokeballs, put on his hooded sweatshirt, hat, and shoes, having slept in his baggy jeans, black t-shirt, and socks the night before. Stuffing the note into his pocket, he ran into the woods behind the center to a field where he knew his adversary would be waiting for him. When Ash arrived, he saw Drew waiting. You're late, he mocked. No, you're just early, Ash retorted. That was the lamest comeback I've ever heard. Drew flicked his hair in Ash's direction. Shut up, Gary! Ash yelled at him, his blood boiling. Gary? You sure you know who I even am? Ash growled. Let's just get this thing going, okay? Someone stepped out of the bushes between Ash and Drew. I will be judging this battle, Brock announced, walking to the side of the battlefield. Brock? What are you doing here? Drew asked. Making eye contact with neither, Brock responded. As an official Pokemon League judge, I will remain impartial in the coming battle. Okay, Brock, what are the rules? This will be a double battle, he announced. Each trainer will use 2 Pokemon with no substitutions. Brock turned to Ash. Send out your first choice. Ash thought for a moment. He wasn't sure about Drew's full lineup, so he'd have to choose a Pokemon that had a relatively neutral type. His choice was obvious. Ipom, I choose you! He lobbed the ball into the air. The Pokeball opened, and in a flash of light, Ipom, the purple monkey Pokemon, had materialized before them. She hopped up and down, her paws up as if she were in a boxing match. Now, Drew, choose both of your Pokemon, Brock commanded. Also, may I just say I like how they're doing counter picks here? Because this is basically how stage striking works in Smash. Like, you have one person ban the first stage, and then the second person ban 2 other stages, and then you have the first person choose the remaining stage from among them. It's actually really sweet. It's really sweet. Sorry. I play Smash competitively, so it's like I need to. It's like I need to point that out. It's super cool. It's super cool. Yeah, that is actually how stage striking works in Smash. All right. Anyway, where was I? All right. Drew took 2 Pokeballs from his side and lobbed them into the air. Go, Masquerain, Roselia! The balls opened, and in 2 flashes of light, 2 Pokemon had appeared. A flying bug Pokemon with a small blue body and large, impressive wings appeared. Large, intimidating eye patterns on the wings, and next to it, a smaller grass and poison Pokemon. His was a small green leafy body, and at the end of his arms were roses, 1 pink and 1 blue on each hand. Now, Ash, Brock turned to him again. Who will be your second Pokemon? Why'd you even have to ask? Ash smiled. Pikachu, let's get him! Pikachu leapt from Ash's shoulder and took his place next to Ipom. Pika! He said, challenging Drew's Pokemon. Ipom and Pikachu versus Masquerain and Roselia, Brock announced. Let the battle begin! Hold on. Alright. Pikachu, let's start with Quick Attack. Ipom, cover him with Swift. Roselia, stop Pikachu in his tracks with Magical Leaf. Masquerain, block Ipom with Silver Wind. Pikachu charged at Roselia with a blinding speed, but Roselia was firing glowing leaves at Pikachu. Ipom swung her tail and shot a ray of stars at the Magical Leaf, but the swift attack was stopped by a glistening gust of wind full of the scales on Masquerain's wings. Pikachu, dodge it! Pikachu left him in the air, but the leaves followed him and smashed into Pikachu, knocking him backwards. Still not know how to battle. Listen! Time advantages don't matter in the anime. It's okay. Pikachu, use. Oh, right here. Pikachu, dodge it! Pikachu left him in the air, but the leaves followed him and smashed into him, knocking him backwards. Pikachu, use Thunderbolt at Masquerain, he commanded. Pikachu cried as he unleashed a massive electric charge from his body. Okay, now you can see why this pacing is a little bit hard. Hey, at least this music is making it awesome. But before Masquerain... Get out of the way, Masquerain! Drew called out to him, but before Masquerain could escape, the Thunderbolt hit its mark. He cried out, flapping his wings to escape the charge. Roselia, use... An Ipom, use Focus Punch! Ash ordered, interrupting him. Ipom was already running close to Roselia, and with that command, the end of her tail began to glow. Ipom furiously punched Roselia and sent him flying. Pikachu, Thunderbolt Masquerain again! He told him. Music confirmed. Exactly! And come on, it's Xenoblade music! It's Xenoblade music! It's perfect! Like, come on, it's perfect! Wait, I lost my place. This is what I get when I switch over to different monitor. Alright, Pikachu, Thunderbolt Masquerain again, he told him. Masquerain, climb out of Pikachu's range, Drew ordered. Pikachu unleashed another electric volley at Masquerain, but this time Masquerain had successfully flown high enough to get out of Pikachu's range. Roselia Petal Dance, Masquerain Ice Beam. Roselia unleashed a flurry of pink petals at Pikachu and Ice Bomb. Masquerain, on the other hand, piled a core icy ray in the path of the Petal Dance. The petals flew through the ice beam and came out as small icy daggers flying in Pikachu and Ice Bomb's direction. Ash tried in vain to call out their names, but by then the combination attack had already connected. The frozen petals cut against Pikachu and Ice Bomb. Pikachu, get ready! Ice Bomb, send Pikachu flying! Ash ordered. Ice Bomb grabbed a tree branch in her small paws, swung completely around, and was about to knock Pikachu in the direction of Masquerain. Pikachu, quick attack! Ice Bomb smacked Pikachu in the air, and a blazing trail was behind him as Pikachu flew towards Masquerain. Roselia, shoot Pikachu down with Magical Leaf! Ice Bomb counter Magical Leaf with Swift! Yeah, having 2 attacks that can't miss! Yeah! Roselia launches glowing leaves at Pikachu, but they were cut from their target with Ice Bomb stars blocking them, causing a mid-air explosion. I learned that one by watching May battle, Ash said, cheering. Images of how Flygon was defeated by May scored in the Kanto Grand Festival returned to Drew's mind. Masquerain, dodge it! Drew called to him, gritting his teeth. Masquerain flew laterally to dodge Pikachu's quick attack, but just as when Pikachu and Masquerain were side by side, Pikachu shot a smile. Pikachu, Iron Tail! Pikachu's tail began to glow, and Masquerain's eyes widened. Pikachu slammed his tail into Masquerain, knocking it toward the ground. Pikachu, wrap this one up with thunder! He shouted triumphantly. Pikachu shot an immense lightning bolt from himself to Masquerain, as commanded. Masquerain shrilled in pain as both he and Pikachu came plummeting to the ground. If you remember my match with May, then you must remember what happened next. Roselia, take Pikachu out with a solar beam before he can get away! Small green Pokemon raises his hands in the air and absorbs sunlight. Pikachu, try to get out of there! Pikachu, however, flailed wildly to try to get out of the way, but other than turning in the air, he couldn't really do anything. Roselia aimed his roses at Pikachu and unleashed the powerful beam of concentrated sunlight. And Ash cried Pikachu's name as the beam approached his friend. And then a loud popping noise was heard. And then the beam came into contact with his target and created a huge explosion. Both sides of the battle waited for the smoke to clear. Chapter 4, Complications. A gust of wind blew through the field and scattered the dust. In the middle of the field, there were 2 Pokemon. Masquerain and Ice Bomb. Both were lying knocked out in the middle of the scene. No way, Drew said. How did Pikachu evade the attack? Oh, okay, I am ready for this one. Now this song choice, I am so happy for. In the bushes across from Brock, 3 sets of eyes watched the battle. No way! Cried a cat-like Pokemon. There's no way that toy's Pikachu could escape that! He wagged his tail furiously and dug his sharp claws into the bush he was looking over. Shh! His bright-clad partners warned him. The blue-haired man looked over at the field. One of his Pokemon, small and pink with wavy black hair, sat on his shoulder. She mimicked his crouched posture and his hopeful gaze. My, those are some powerful Pokemon. Think if we could get them to the boss, he squealed. His Pokemon happily mimicked him. James, that's what we try every time, the pessimistic red-haired woman told him. The reason we can't get them is because they're so powerful. She continued to brush her long, beautiful red hair. I suppose you're right, Jesse, James sighed. His mime juror sitting on his shoulder minded his sizing expression. Not these 3, I know, right? Now you understand why I'm using Groos's theme from Skyward Sword. Isn't it though? I know, right? Absolutely perfect. Oh god, I love Team Rocket so much. Unironically, I love those guys. Wow, the cat Pokemon chimed in, the charm in the middle of his forehead taking a slight shine. We could always go with the good old wait till they tire themselves out and swoop it and grab and plan. That's a great idea, Meow. Meow things shot. His eyes said sparkling. Mime Jr. mimicked him. But boy, hasn't it worked before? Jessie sighed, continuing to brush her hair. Oh yeah. James then was depressed again. Well, if at voice you don't succeed, try again, Meow said, trying to rally the troops. Oh right, I'm in. James, ever the mood swingy person he was happy again. Mime Jr. mimed his cheer. Oh, I guess I am too, Jessie said, sighing, getting tired of brushing. Even if we lose again. Ah, Buffet! Jesse's blobby blue Pokemon chimed out after escaping his Pokeball. James, Mime Jr., and Meowth all sighed. By the way, Boba Fett's my favorite. While that exchange was taking place, Ash and Drew looked for Pikachu, who had disappeared when the solar beam attack connected. Where is Pikachu anyway? Ash asked, concerned about his buddy's location. His eyes wandered to the tree where Aipom had been standing and saw Pikachu sitting there, looking as confused as the rest of them were. Aipom must have used her baton pass, Brock said, surveying the scene. Baton pass? It's an attack that causes a Pokemon to switch places with another of its trainer's Pokemon. If the user has made itself faster or stronger, like with agility, then that increase would be passed on to the other Pokemon. Aipom used it to switch places with Pikachu to protect. Ah, so that's what the popping sound was, Ash said, recalling the sound before the explosion. Brock raised both his hands in the air. Masquerain and Aipom are unable to battle. This match will continue as a single battle with Pikachu battling Roselia. Continue the match! Both trainers recalled their fainted Pokemon. Ruth thanked Masquerain for putting up such a great fight, while Ash thanked Aipom for taking the beam for Pikachu. We can't waste this opportunity, Pikachu! Thunderbolt him! Pikachu approached Roselia and launched a Thunderbolt. The attack struck the small grass type, but it shook it off, because obviously it would, because it's grass type. Roselia! Okay, I might have ad-libbed that last part. Roselia, petal dance! Drew commanded. Roselia spun itself around, and sharp flower petals rained across the field. Pikachu tried its best to get out of the way of some of them, but he ended up getting caught in it anyway. Force knocked Pikachu away from Roselia and landed on the ground with a resounding thud. Get up, Pikachu! I know you can do it, buddy! Pikachu weakly pulled itself up on all fours. Roselia also had a dazed expression on his face. That was absolutely necessary. Thank you, Aiden. I'm glad that you appreciate a good ad-lib. That's right, Ash thought. Petal Dance tires out the user, making it hard to focus on its attacks. Pikachu, this is our shot! Take him out with Volt Tackle! Ash shouted, forcefully pointing at Roselia. Pikachu then started running toward Roselia, all while chanted, Pika, 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 Pika! Roselia finished off Solar Beam! Drew commanded, trying to get out a counteroffensive underway, but Roselia, dazed, raises roses into the air to collect sunlight. Albeit probably not as fast as it could. Pika, 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 Pika! A golden aura began to surround Pikachu, and then it completely enveloped it. Charged even faster and faster. Oh boy, Pikachu's using his final smash! Roselia now! Pika, 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 Pika! He called, tackling Roselia. The charge surrounding Pikachu was transferred into it, and the energy coursed into the flower Pokemon's body. He released his focus and launched a Solar Beam harmlessly away from Pikachu. The force of Pikachu's impact caused a small explosion, and Pikachu flipped out of the smoke and landed on all fours, panting heavily. Roselia, on the other hand, fell out of the smoke and lay there, struggling to stand. Pikachu and Roselia glared at each other, and then Roselia fell backwards, unconscious. Brock raised his hand. Roselia is no longer able to battle. Ash and Pikachu are the winners. All right, Ash said, running over to Pikachu and picking him up. He snuggled Pikachu as he laughed. Drew, looking defeated, walked to his beaten Pokemon and picked him up. Ash looked up at the clear blue sky, and the sun was shining above his head in the sun had been shining bright above. Wait, sapphire colored. May! Ash remembered. He ran up to Drew with Pikachu on his shoulder and an angry look on his face. All right, I won. Now where's May? He demanded. Drew looked confused. Me? I thought you kidnapped her. Ash, surprised, took the note out of his pocket. But I got your note, he said, showing it to him. Drew glanced it over, reached into his pocket, pull out the note he had received. You mean this one? He showed his copy. Sure enough, it was exactly the same as Ash's, minus a note about his Pokeballs being in the attached bag. Rip boiling water, you'll be missed. Oh my god, Orville. I love you, Orville. Casually using 5 moves on one Pokemon in the same battle. Anime logic. Listen. It makes more sense for them to use 5 moves. Having only 4 moves is like just a gameplay mechanic limitation. You know what I mean? It's like Pokemon aren't wizards in D&D. They can't like just have they can't just have them, you know, you can't just have like moves prepared beforehand. You know? But then again, I did run a Pokemon D&D campaign once, and yeah, it was fun. All right. Something funny is going on here, Ash noted. Wait, was that supposed to be a song? Brock swallowed the lump in his throat. In the bushes behind Brock, two sets of eyes watched with glowing interest. May, what are they talking about? You haven't been kidnapped. It's part of the battle, Max, May said, brushing him off, trying to hear Ash and Drew talking. She had really expected more dramatic speeches from the boys who professed love to her. Something like she had read in the book she had brought with her in Kanto. Drew was probably too stuck on himself to do that, May thought. Pokemon are always number one with Ash. If he had to choose between any girl and Pikachu, there would be some broken hearts, I'm sure. Well, why are they battling? Max pressed her further. You still haven't told me. Brock backed up to the bushes. May, I think the jig is up. They're getting suspicious, he answered discreetly. I guess I better come clean then, huh? May said with a gulp. She stood up, brushed the dirt off her skirt and legs. She straightened her bandana and cautiously tried to put in the cutest look on her face she could muster. Hey guys! She said loud enough for both of them to hear, blushing and smiling as she stepped out of the bushes. May! Ash and Drew turned their heads and exclaimed simultaneously. Ash and Drew excitedly ran over to her, both relieved that no apparent harm had come to her. I was so worried about you, Ash said, with a smile. I thought you were in danger, Drew said, also smiling. Yeah, this is my fault. I'm sorry I pitted you against each other. So you planted the notes, Drew said. May blushed and put her hand behind her head in a nervous way. It's the only thing Brock and I could come up with. Ash and Drew both turned towards Brock. You were in on this? And Brock raised his hands in defense. May was distressed about what to do after you both told her you loved her in the same night. So hey, don't come looking at. And I'm ad-libbing this last part. So hey, don't come looking at me. Also, hi Arrow, how are you doing? Hi. We're reading Pokemon fanfiction right now. And I'm having fun! I'm having fun! Ash and Drew turned to face each other. You're in love with May too? They shouted at each other. You two are fighting over my sister? Ash said, shocked, and Ash and Drew blushed. It's a long story, May said, beginning, but she wasn't quite sure how to even start, to be honest, considering how long this reckoning was even coming. Okay, then now this part I've actually written beforehand, because this pacing part was a little bit too egregious for me. Word strings that may have possibly formed a semblance of a coherent idea came and went, but judging by the expectant faces that were staring holes into her, she grabbed one at random and made an honest attempt to explain. Unfortunately, though, or perhaps fortunately, if one were watching from the point of view of one who wished herself invisible, a long metal arm with a red glove had suddenly reached down and snatched Pikachu off of Zap's shoulder. A second came down not long after and grabbed Roselia out of Drew's arms. Pikachu, Ash called to him! Roselia! Drew reached for his partner before he was pulled back to a familiar Meowth-shaped hot air balloon hovering in the sky. Both Pikachu and Roselia were placed into tough, clear plastic spheres. Pikachu tried an electric attack, but it had no effect on his confinement. Holding those spheres and sneering were Meowth and James of Team Rocket, with Jessie standing on the opposite side of them both. Not you guys again. Okay, well, and you guys can guess what I'm gonna be playing next, right? Prepare for trouble while your back is turned, Jessie began. Make it double from the lesson you should have learned. An evil as old as the galaxy, sent here to fulfill our destiny, and as me, to denounce the evils of truth and love, to extend our reach to the stars above. Jessie, James, and Meowth are the names. Anywhere there's peace in the universe, Team Rocket will be there to make everything worse. Wah, Buffett. Sorry, I had to do it. Team Rocket, they all shouted longtime nemesis. What are you guys doing here? Drew asked them. The same thing we do every time, James mocked him back. We're here for Pikachu, and this time we've got it. Not for long, Ash muttered, reaching for a Pokeball. Wait, May told him. It's my fault that Pikachu and Roselia battle anyway, so I'll handle it. Wait, James interrupted. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, it's so hard to switch between. Wait. Ah, wrong tab. It's so hard to switch between songs if it's like I have them all like in different tabs. Anyway. Wait, James interruption. Do you mean that the twerp pet and the boy twerps? You mean that the twerp pet got the boy twerps to fight each other? Oh, Jesse's eyes began to sparkle. That's so romantic! It must be love! Ash, May, and Drew looked at each other blushing. It is! The boy twerps must be in love with the girl! This is just like the book I've been reading. Wait, you've been reading the same book? May asked her. If you mean Gem Cross Lovers, of course! Jessie announced, pulling her copy of the novel out of her pocket. Hey, I'm reading that too! May also pulled her copy out of her fanny pack. The cover had a man in a red tunic with a sword clashing against another, held by a man in a green robe. In the background between the swords stood a princess draped in blue, and hovering over her was the image of an old man wearing a golden crown. The title of the book was embossed in reflective letters at the top. I love this novel, it's so romantic! May squealed. I know! Jessie squealed back. It's just so wonderfully sweet. I want to be in Princess Sapphire's place and have two men fighting over me. Ash and Drew cringed over the similarity over their plight to what happened in the book May and Jessie were reading. Ruby and Emerald, the two bravest knights in the realm, had fallen in love with the beautiful Princess Sapphire, Jessie started. But just as Ruby and Emerald began to fight over Sapphire's heart, the evil Count Topaz kidnapped her, and Ruby and Emerald had to put their differences aside to rescue her. May finished Jessie's quote off the back cover. That means, Jessie giggled, that the two twerp boys really are in love with you, right? Ash and Drew, already flushed, had now reached a level of crimson so deep that one could have sworn they were both choking. No doubt at least one of them had wished it were the case, if only to put him out of his misery. Yeah, but I couldn't choose between them. May looked down, so I had to fight them, had to have them fight each other. I was hoping I'd see something in the battle. Meowth whispered James. I thought that the toy would have ended up with the red-headed gym leader girl. What? I thought she was with that kid from the Orange Islands now. He whispered. I don't know why I was giving James a Patrick voice. Yeah, outside. I guess we wouldn't know love it constantly beating belittle us, huh? I guess not, James sadly agreed. Mime Jr. copied him. Well, you know what comes next in the story, Jessie said, smiling at the twerp, still reaching for something inside the balloon, not paying James or Meowth any attention. Alright, I have to switch to another one. Let's switch to another song. What? I just got to that part a few days ago, and I haven't had a chance to read it recently, May asked her, puzzled. Before May could react, the arm that Jessie was holding reached out and grabbed her around her narrow midsection. Ash reached for her hand as she was being pulled away. May! He shouted futilely. Her hand was within reach for only a moment, but then was quickly pulled away. Ash! May cried out to him, tears forming in her eyes. Wait a minute. Well. Wait, what Regine? Wait, oh no, no, don't do that, Ada, please. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. Oh my god. That would be funny though, it would actually be funny though. Yes, I love Smash music, what can I say? Jessie held May above her head with her restraint in the arm's grasp. Well, if you knights want to save her, you're just gonna have to chase her. Jessie was giddy with glee as the balloon began to drift away. James, I think she's cracked, Meowth whispered in James's ear. One bad egg spoils the whole carton, I'm afraid. Fat chance if you think you're getting away, Ash tossed the Pokeball in the air. Swallow, take that balloon down! In a flash, a navy blue bird with a red crest and a white underside appeared in the air. His sharp eyes quickly eyed the balloon. Swell! He responded to his trainer's call. Take down the balloon with aerial ace! Ash commanded, more anger in his voice than normal. Swallow began darting through the air, glowing streaks flying around him. Plunged through the balloon, quickly deflating, the blue fell into the distance. Now we got it! Huh? Ash began before rumbling came over the forest. Before he could say more, a large purple ship came flying out of the forest near where the balloon had gone down. A large skull and crossbones pattern on the underside, and boasted a face familiar to Ash, and propellers were attached to the top, giving it flight capabilities. He gasped as he recalled the shape of the Team Rocket Pokemon he had battled until early in the Hoenn region. Your birdie Zeus against our wheezing air mecha! James taunted over the loudspeaker. Now we're going to take Pikachu, Roselia, and all you little friends Pokemon, and there's nothing you can do! All right, Chapter 5, Crisis. Catch you on the flip side! Team Rocket shouted as the wheezing mecha disappeared over the horizon. No, Ash cried weakly as Team Rocket flew away. Flygon, let's go! Drew tossed a ball into the air. The ball snapped open and a dragon type appeared. Its body green with red lenses over his eyes. It stood confidently with his green diamond-shaped wings outlined in red. At the end of his long tail, 3 small diamond-shaped scales snapped at the ground. Drew leapt onto his back and turned and called to Ash. Come on, are you coming? What? Ash said, pointing himself. You want me to come along with you? Yeah, so come on! Drew shouted again. Or I'll go save May, Roselia, and your rat by myself. He added, knowing it would push Ash's buttons. The buttons were indeed pressed. Ash hopped on Flygon's back with Drew and wrapped his arms around his midsection for support. I forgot to mark another lap in my stopwatch. Similar to what he and Max had done during their adventure with Jirachi. With a flap of his wings, Flygon took off and started heading out to where the wheezing mecha had disappeared. The wheezing mecha had a higher flight speed than the mouth balloon, that was certain. But it couldn't hide its huge purple self as well as the balloon could. Ash and Drew saw the mecha flying in the distance. Drew tapped Flygon on the head and pointed in the mecha's direction. He nodded and began flying toward the large purple airship even more quickly than before. It was quite a ways away, but Flygon was definitely making headway. After but a moment of flying, Ash worked up the courage to ask Drew something. Hey Drew, why did you want me to come along? Drew looked back at him with an answer he had been working on since he'd asked him to come along. I figure I need help to chase down Team Rocket, and you seem like you have a lot of experience with them. I'm not sure if that's an insult or a compliment, Ash said, laughing. Also, Drew continued, I want the one May has chosen to be there. If it's me, then just me coming would have been better. After he said that, he paused and looked at the purple figure in the distance. I just wasn't sure if he was looking at May's captors or taking a moment to gather his thoughts. He looked up and continued talking. But if she chooses you, I want you to be there for her. Because I want me to be happy, Ash. I know you do too. Ash put a puzzled look on his face. Drew, are you all right? He asked him. Drew looked back into his eyes. I want us to promise each other something, Ash. We both love May very much, but when she's forced to choose someone, one of us is gonna get hurt. I want us to promise that we won't harbor hard feelings towards each other after this. Ash smiled and nodded, feeling too good to put a small rivalry behind him. After all, Ash said, we're both May's friends, so we should be happy for whatever path she chooses. Ash extended his hand in friendship to May's rival. Drew smiled at him, shook his hand. Thanks, Ash. Now, let's find May. Meanwhile, as the wheezing mecha puttered along, a girl was tied to a bar in the storage area with a small white Pokemon standing watch over her. It was a rather small room. All the walls, the roof, and the floor were all made of metal. The girl flicked her brown hair about wildly as she attempted to shake from the rope that bound her to the support pillar of the room. The Pokemon grinned, and the charm in his head shone very, very faintly. If you don't want to tie me this instant, Meowth, May shouted at him, I'll really let you have it when my friends come to save me. And what are you gonna do about a toy, girl? What are you gonna do about a toy pet? Yes, taunted her. Yell up her yellow fanny pack just out of the reach of her kicking legs. All your Pokemon are locked inside the ball, so they can't come out to save you. As he laughed, May thought for a moment. He's right. My Pokemon won't come out unless I toss the balls. Wait, not all of them follow that rule. Okay, well, I have another song to play. May took in a deep breath and then shouted at the top of her lungs, Munchlax, lunchtime! Meowth looked up in surprise as the pack lit up and a white ray shot out. A figure about his height, slightly taller, had appeared before him. His two tall, dark bluish-green ears sat atop his large yellow mouth, with his round eyes sitting on the ground, bluish-green ball that seemed to connect them together. Not gonna be very helpful, but I mean, you know. Hey, May's still thinking outside the box. The dark color of his fur was evident in all places except for his belly, which shared colors with his mouth. Two Fangs shot up, and he licked his lips in anticipation of the promised meal. Munch! The movie Pure Pokemon smiled at May, and then began to look at its surroundings. Munchlax, get back my pack and the other Pokemon, and I'll feed you plenty when we get back to Brock, May said, bribing her gluttonous Pokemon. Unable to resist the promise of food, Munchlax's gaze focused on the bag Meowth was holding, determined to retrieve it and earn his promised reward. All right, Fatso, if you want this, Meowth extended his claws. Come and get it. Munchlax's Focus Punch, May commanded. Munchlax's hand began to glow with an intense aura as it leapt at Meowth and swung its fist. Meowth jumped over and scratched Munchlax's face. Man, she cried as the claws raked it. How do you like that? Meowth laughed. At that moment, Munchlax stood and began to wiggle his fingers back and forth. The extended fingers began to glow. What are you doing? Mouth stood there. Is that metronome? Come on, Munchlax. May silently hoped. Pull me a winner. It stopped wiggling his fingers, let out a loud pop when the move had been completed. Everyone stood silent for a moment. What'd you do? You planted grass? That was just me ad-libbing. Oh, I didn't think about doing that. This is so bad. Munchlax the goat indeed. Before he could get an answer, Munchlax opened his mouth and let fly a flurry of tiny red embers. The embers caught Meowth's tail on fire, so he quickly tossed the pack into the air and proceeded to pull out his tail. Or put out his tail. Munchlax leapt up and grabbed May's pack and began to unzip it. Great job, Munchlax! Now open up the other Pokeballs for some backup! May cheered for him. She saw that Munchlax had gone for a Pokeblock case and was about to gorge himself on May's pink surprise. Oh no, not now! May continued squirming. Rescue now, food later! Oh, he was pulling out the case. A Pokeball popped out and opened on the ground. A larger Pokemon coming out. She had 3 orange feathers on her head, and the rest of her head was yellow with her red eyes showing her confusion. She had sharp claws on each of her arms and powerful orange legs. Sharp talons on her feet were brown, giving this Pokemon a chicken-like appearance. Combuskin, May said, giving a sigh of relief. Come over here and untie me! She said, she's cheerfully replied. She ran behind May and used her sharp claws to cut the ropes restraining her. She then stood up and stretched. Soon running over to Munchlax, pulled out his ball out of her pack and recalled him, hoping to save what Pokeblock she had left. She reached down and picked up Combuskin's Pokeball and slid it into the bag. Now let's turn the tables on Meow, she said, sneering in his direction, while he coddled his tail. This then caused him to look up. When May began to approach him, Meowth leapt up and ran out of the automated door into the hall, screaming, Help! Jesse! James! Prison break! May followed him out the door, but he disappeared into one of the other 2 rooms in the air mecha. She pulled out her Pokédex and brought up Weezing's picture. She saw the 3 orbs on it, and given the size of the room she was in, came to the conclusion that she was in the smallest one. She took a guess and thought that the central room would be the largest, and also guessed that that was where Jesse, James, and Meowth would be. She walked up to one of the other doors, not knowing which would lead her to Team Rocket. The door opened to her, and the door opened to their presence. Meanwhile, outside, Ash, Drew, and Flygon had caught up with the wheezing air mecha and had landed on the middle-sized orb. They looked into the eyes from above to see the rockets piloting the mecha from the inside of the larger head. They went over to the second one with eyes to try to get a surprise attack on them after breaking it. Looking into the smaller window, they saw 2 orbs containing their Pokemon. Pikachu! Ash cried. Roselia! Drew cried out as well. The 2 Pokemon couldn't hear them, so they kept looking sadly at the door. It's no good, Ash grunted. They can't hear us. Flygon, try Flamethrower on the window, Drew ordered his dragon type. Flygon took in a deep breath and blew flames out of his mouth. Y'all torture! Little Skyrim reference for all y'all. The fire hit the window, but after it cleared, the window looked no worse for wear. It must be protected from attacks on the outside, Drew hypothesized. If we can get an attack to hit it from the inside. Just then, the door opened and a bewildered May stepped in. May! Both of the boys shouted simultaneously. They began banging on the glass. May looked up and saw both their mouths flapping, but couldn't hear them at all. Ash! Drew! She shouted as she ran into the window. Pikachu and Roselia's gaze followed her, and they saw their trainers on the outside. It's no good, Drew thought out loud. She can't hear us either. May turned around and held Pikachu and Roselia out of their confinement. Pikachu shook for a bit, stretched, and was ready to go. Roselia looked forlornly at the window and enjoyed the sunlight. Ash knew that he could communicate with Pikachu without having to be heard, and began to mouth an unhearable command to Pikachu, who saw him and read his lips. Pikachu relayed the information to Combuskin, pointing at the window. Combuskin agreed, then turning to the window. Her arm began to glow as she ran at it, leapt at it, and broke through it with an uppercut. Ash and Drew caught Combuskin and prevent from flying off. Thank you, Combuskin, Ash whispered to her, a small blush appearing on her face. Ash and Drew lowered themselves, and Combuskin down into the room with May. Drew ordered Flygon to wait outside in case they needed to make a quick escape. With that, Flygon began to fly alongside the mecha. Glad to see you again, buddy. Ash cuddled Pikachu in his arms. Thank you, May. I don't know what we'd do if you didn't show up in here. You should thank Munchlax and Combuskin. They're the ones who got me away from Meowth. they said, presenting Combuskin to Ash. Ash and Combuskin smiled at each other, and Drew had already called Roselia into his ball for rest after he made sure his Pokemon was okay. Now we gotta stop this thing from stealing any more Pokemon. Ash announced to the group. They agreed, but as they were turning around, Team Rocket ran into the door. It's a toy triple team! The members of Team Rocket shouted. How did you two get in? Jessie asked them. With a little help from yours truly, May said with a wink. Combuskin, the fire type added. Well, your little Prince Charmings aren't going to get the best of us this day, James taunted them. I wish my Prince Charming would realize what he has, Jessie said, muttering to herself. What was that? James turned to her, almost shouting. Jessie blushed a little. Oh, nothing. That's a lie, James retorted. I can tell. Well, I can wish for love too if I want. Look at the torps over there, Jessie shouted back. I don't know who this guy is, but get a grip, woman. We need to catch Pikachu. And again, you missed the hint. Now, will you two stop arguing? Meow shouted at him. We need to get Pikachu back at least. You guys argue like an old married couple, May said, giggling. Both Jessie and James got a light blush on their cheeks. All right, let's get this battle started, Jessie said, turning to the children. All right. Oh, okay, well, I guess I'm switching back to the Xenoblade music. Again. Man! Okay. Go, Survivor! Jessie threw her Pokeball. Go, Cacnea! Go, Absol. Drew flung one of his Pokemons in the air. And Sceptile, I choose you! Ash lobbed his Pokeball into the air as well. Team Rocket's Pokeballs unleashed a highly stylized black and gold serpent and a small round cactus-like Pokemon. The serpent Pokemon had large red eyes and patches of purple on his face. Long red fangs and a red blade on the end of his tail gave his Pokemon an intimidating appearance. His partner had a small yellow flower on her head and needles along her arms. She was short compared to even Corphish. The green Pokemon turned around and leapt in James' face, causing him to scream in pain and pull the cactus Pokemon off. When Drew's Pokeball opened, a creature coated in long, coarse fur appeared. It had a blue face, and atop that face was a blue scythe. The Pokemon stood on 4 legs and had sharp, piercing eyes. Next to him appeared Ash's tall grass type. He had a reptilian appearance, with large yellow seeds lining his back. His tail was like the trunk of a palm tree, and sharp leaves grew out along his forearm and behind his claws. Viper, start with a poison tail on Absol, Jessie commanded. Use Pin Missile and Sceptile, Cacnea. Sceptile, quick attack. Absol, use Razor Wind. Sceptile lunged at Cacnea, knocking her off balance. The cactus Pokemon's Pin Missile misfired at the ceiling. You know, as you'd probably expect. Meanwhile, Viper's glowing purple tail smashed into Absol, who was gathering energy for Razor Wind. The impact knocked the disaster Pokemon into the air, but Absol turned around and launched a blade of wind at Viper while in midair. The blade knocked Viper back into Team Rocket, slamming him through the wall into the control room of the mecha. Meanwhile, Cacnea and Sceptile continued their duel. Cacnea began spinning her arms at Sceptile, but his forearms, these became green, glowing blades. They clashed their arms together, but Sceptile easily overpowered the smaller Pokemon. She bounced back into the control room and stood to face the attacker. Team Rocket began to stand up after the impact that they had just suffered. The Viper turned up to Absol and hissed. He lunged at Absol and bent it aside, but Absol shook him off and launched a wave of water from the ground at Viper. The snake Pokemon jumped out of the way at the wave, only for it to come into contact with the control panel. And boy, don't we love friendly fire? Sceptile saw this and thought of a plan to take advantage of it. He opened his mouth and shot some glowing seeds at Cacnea. Yeah, okay, bullet seed on a grass type. Heh. The enraged grass type fell into Sceptile's trap and began to fire pin missiles at him. The evolved Pokemon slipped out of the way, and the pin shot holes in the control panel. Parts of the panel began to go up in small explosions. The entire mecha began to shake. We gotta get out of here, Drew exclaimed. He turned to the outside and called for Flygon. The dragon ground type showed up, and Drew, Ash with Pikachu on his shoulder, and May all got on his back. Flygon took off and flew outside the mecha. After getting a certain distance away, Flygon turned and watched the mecha suffer a massive explosion, destroying the hull and sending Team Rocket flying. How did a malfunctioning panel blow up the entire mecha? Jessie shouted as she, James, Meowth, Survivor, and Cacnea hurled through the air. I thought if everything was interconnected that the system would hold up better, Meowth said sadly. Well, if it wasn't for those lover boys, we'd have gotten away with it. James cursed his luck. I hope someday the love of my life comes to my rescue, Jessie sighed. Well, I think we can all agree that love stinks. Wow, Buffett! Looks like Team Rocket's blasting off again! The group cried, and they disappeared in the bright blue sky with a twinkle. Team Flygon began to turn and fly away after the trainers had a chance to see Team Rocket toss away no more than trash. Drew had noticed that his Pokemon wasn't flying as fast as it could, though. He saw sweat pouring out of his forehead. Crud, Drew said behind clenched teeth. Flygon isn't used to carrying this much weight. He turned to his friends. We have to find a place to land. Flygon can't carry all three of us. Before they could even begin to look, Flygon began to falter. May's grip slipped and he began to slide off Flygon. May, try to hold on! Ash turned and saw her falling. Her hands couldn't grip Flygon's hide, and she began to slide on the thin part of his tail. Flygon let out a screech and flicked his tail skyward, sending May flying above Ash and Drew's heads. Chapter 6, Crash Landing. Actually, I think this might be... I think this might be the last chapter for now, actually. Or, I don't know, actually. How much time has it been? Only an hour, 46 minutes? Well, okay, well then again, I do kind of want to show y'all something that I've written, so, you know. Let's just finish this one, and then I'll switch us over to... another one. All right, Chapter 6, Crash Landing. May! Ash and Drew shouted. Ash turned and leapt from Flygon and dove to catch May, who was belting out an eardrum-melting screech, her eyes clenched shut. When she felt herself land in the strong arms of boys, she stopped screaming and opened her tear-filled eyes to see Ash look down at her, giving her a smile. Grab onto me, May, he told her calmly yet sternly. The girl obeyed and wrapped her arms around Ash's neck, her face planted in his chest. Ash used one of his newly freed hands to reach for a Pokeball. He held out and opened it in the palm of his hand, and his familiar Swallow appeared. Swallow, grab onto my shoulders, help us glide down! He commanded. Pikachu, currently residing in Ash's shoulder, unzipped and climbed into Ash's pack as the Swallow Pokemon obeyed and landed his talons on Ash's shoulders. The combined weight of Ash, May, and Pikachu in both of their packs took the Pokemon by surprise, and he dug his talons into Ash's flesh. Swallow felt what was happening and gawked at his trainer's face. Ash looked up at him and shouted, "It's all right! Just do what you gotta do!" Swallow nodded and spread his wings to help lower their airspeed. Flygon tiring, and Masquerain still weakened from the battle, Drew could only sit and watch as Ash and May fell towards a lake. Damn it! He cursed himself with clenched fists. He decided to fly his Pokemon to the center to get it healed and return with more help. Why does the Swallow go? Need them to catch them? I don't know. Listen, it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it because of shippiness. Just let him cook. Just let him cook. His talons gripping his trainer's flesh, Swallow glided Ash and May to the best of his ability toward the lake below them. As he descended, he could feel himself ripping his friend. He could feel himself ripping his friend's skin. Ash cringed as the sharp claws of the Pokemon cut against him. May's eyes filled with horror as she saw what Swallow was doing to Ash. Before she could voice her concern, Swallow loosened his grip on him, letting his talons slip from the boy's shoulders into the ring on top of his pack. Ash let his grip on May go after a moment to let his arm slip out of his pack and allow Swallow to carry it himself. Afterwards, he immediately clutched May again in his arms as they plummeted into the cold waters of the lake. Pikachu looked down as he saw Ash and May fall in, the electric Pokemon muttering to himself sadly. Swallow flew and landed on the shore of the lake, waiting for Ash to surface. Amidst all the water Pokemon in the lake, Ash held May in his arms and swam with his legs to what looked to him like the shore. Seeing the surface of the water above him, he held May above him in order to get her to reach the surface first. May opened her mouth gratefully took in the fresh air. Ash stood up from under the water and held May in his arms. He walked up to the shore and dropped her into the grass. He fell to his knees and rolled over onto his back, breathing heavily. After coughing for a bit, May sat up and looked over at him. It was obvious he was in a great deal of pain. Swallow and Pikachu flew from the other side of the lake, having landed opposite of where Ash had decided to swim. The bird Pokemon stood on his master's pack, and Pikachu leapt out of it and ran to his friend and placed his hands on Ash's face.
Ash opened his eyes to see Pikachu, and the electric Pokemon smiled in relief. Ash attempted to sit up, but the pain in his shoulders dragged him back down. May crawled over to the injured trainer. "Oh, Ash," she said, seeing the holes in his sweatshirt. The threads loosely covering the punctures were stained with blood. She gripped the bottom of the sweatshirt and began to pull it over his head. "Hey, what are you..." Ash managed to get out before the shirt covered his mouth. The movement of his arms caused him to scream in pain. Luckily for May, his scream was muffled in the wet sweatshirt. If the sweatshirt was discarded, May knew that the black shirt the boy was wearing had to come next. She could see the bleeding through it. Ash watched with some kind of horror in his face as May continued to undress the upper half of his body. The black shirt fit his lightly muscular form more tightly than the sweatshirt had, and being wet made it stick to Ash even tighter. May tugged on it hard and managed to pull off the offending shirt. Once again, Ash screamed when his arms were moved to the garment. This time the scream hit May's ears, but she knew she had to do something. Without being treated, Ash could die from his wounds. Tears appeared in her eyes, especially after she saw Ash's shoulders without clothing. Blood was streaming down his body in a slow yet steady flow. In desperation, May untied the wet bandana from her hair. She wrung it out lightly, and then, using as much strength as she could muster, ripped her bandana in half. Ash watched as a few tears began to trickle down her cheeks. She leaned over top of Ash and began to tie one half of her bandana around each of her friend's wounds. "Let me know if it's too tight," May whispered to him as she tugged the fabric tight around the wound and began to... She tugged the fabric taut around the wound and began to tie it tightly. Ash cringed a bit when she finished tying first shoulder. She looked down at his face, her eyes full of tears and worry. He forced himself into a smile and said, "It's all right. Thank you, May." She nodded and began to tie the other half of her bandana around her friend's shoulder. May sat back and stood up. Her wet hair clung to the sides of her face, her wet clothes showing off her figure even more than usual. Ash's hat, sweatshirt, and black tee were in a muddy pile, having been hastily discarded. The sight of May soaking wet and the thought of himself half exposed brought a smile and then a chuckle to his face. Soon, he couldn't help it from boiling over into full-on laughter. May began to snicker as well, and then exploded with laughter herself, falling down in her rear, laughing hysterically. Swallow and even Pikachu, normally in sync with Ash, were confused at what had just happened. The Pokemon stood dumbstruck as the trainers laughed so loudly that the native Pokemon began to fly away. "Are you gonna be alright, Ash?" May asked him, wiping the tears that had formed from the laughter away. I think so," Ash said, attempting to sit up. He strained for a bit, but he did end up sitting up. Pikachu gleefully leapt into Ash's lap and began to coo affectionately. Swallow smiled as much as a bird could, and then looked to where Ash's wounds were covered by May's bandana. He looked down and turned away from the others. Ash turned to Swallow and gave him some encouraging words. "Don't be so down, Swallow. You only did what you had to do. If you didn't do it, May and I could have died." The Pokemon protested, feeling he should have been penalized for his actions. "Don't be so hard on yourself," he said, reaching his hand over the flying type. He clutched the bird by his underside and placed him gently into his lap. "I don't think any less of you because of this. You're still my friend," he said. He continued talking, stroking his Pokemon's feathers. "I know you'd never hurt me on purpose. I love you, Swallow. You're part of my family just like my mom and Pikachu and everyone else." His reassuring words, combined with the stroking he was receiving, managed to calm his nerves. Ash slowly reached for the Pokeball that belonged to Swallow, picked it up, expanded it to its maximum size, and pointed it at him. "I think it's time for you to take a rest, Swallow," he said. A beam of red light shot from the ball, reverting him to pure energy, and Swallow returned to the Pokeball. Ash, sighing, looked at the lake with Pikachu sitting at his feet. May, however, staring at Ash, consumed with the scene that she had just witnessed. Ash had leaned over to pick up his distraught Pokemon, even though his shoulders were in so much pain. He calmed him down by reassuring Swallow that he hadn't done anything wrong. Gently stroked him, his calming touch easing the Swallow Pokemon's distress. And to top it all off, she thought to herself, he told Swallow that he loved him. Even easier than he could tell me. Shaking the thoughts from her head momentarily, she spoke up to break the silence. "Hey Ash, are you gonna be able to walk?" I could try to carry you if you need me to. He blushed with embarrassment. I think I can do it on my own, he stated. Struggled with his arms, but was unable to stand up. I think I might need some help up first, he said, chuckling. May walked around to his backside and sat down. Hesitantly, she wrapped her arms around his torso and pulled him in tightly. Now just use your legs to stand up, alright? I'll pull you up, she said, slightly blushing. She was glad Ash hadn't been able to see. Ash pulled in his legs and began efforts to stand. I spread her legs apart so that they were alongside Ash's legs to give her better, better support. She bent her knees and then began to pull herself and Ash upright. Her arms squeezed Ash tightly, causing him to lose his breath. But when May finished the process of getting him to his feet, she let him go. She hesitantly let him go, and Ash breathed deeply for a moment. May thought for a moment, great, he's gonna on me for squeezing him so tight. Thanks, May, Ash said after catching his breath. This response caught her by surprise, though. Normally when Ash's personal space was invaded, he got extremely defensive, like with Tori in LaRusse City. Could you carry my pack, May? I don't think my shoulders are up to it. May saw him smiling, but still weakened. She gave him a smile back and turned and picked up his pack. While she was leaning down to pick it up, Pikachu jumped onto her shoulder. Oh, Pikachu, shouldn't you be hanging around Ash? You know as well as I do that if Pikachu was on my shoulder, it would hurt, he told her in a slightly teasing way. May nodded, welcomed Pikachu onto her shoulder. She put on his pack, and with the bottom of it sitting on top of her own wet pack, that was when she realized that she was still wet from her fall into the lake. She decided that it would be best not to worry about that right now, and it would be better to get a move on, to see if they could find a way back to their friends at the Pokemon Center. But how are we gonna find our way back, she thought out loud. Neither of them had any way to contact Brock, Max, or the Pokemon Center. I think we should start moving, Ash advised her. We don't know how long it'll take for anyone to find us. We also need to make sure we don't disturb the wild Pokemon too much, and that we can make sure we don't get caught by Team Rocket. May agreed, placing Ash's wet shirt and sweatshirt in the pack. She carried Ash's belongings away from the lake as the two, Sun plus Pikachu, began walking through the forest. After maintaining a small talk with Ash for a while, May's mind wandered back to his compassion for Swellow. She remembered when she saw him sleeping next to Pikachu after he had fallen ill shortly after she met him way back in Hoenn. Ash would always love his Pokemon more than any girl he met, she thought. But that's like him. He sees his Pokemon as part of his family. Some he treats like his brothers, like Pikachu. Others, May found herself thinking, he treats like his children. Sure, he disciplines them, but he loves them more than anything. More than me, anyway. She turned her thoughts away from that and remembered how he had taken Swellow into his strong arms. He was so gentle with Swellow, so kind, so loving. Ash would always be awkward while interacting with other people, but he could always express himself perfectly to his Pokemon. May realized this, and now knew where Ash's loving side had been all this time. He's not confident around girls, she thought, and that's why he doesn't really understand love. May caught herself. Really doesn't understand romance, she corrected herself. He easily knows what love is. Anyway, that's why he stuttered when he's admitted to me how he felt. He was afraid that I would reject him, but because of his fear that I was in love with Drew, he thought that he would have to do something. That is so Ash of him. It's just like when he battles, she thought. Ash does some pretty unpredictable things when backed up to a wall. And that's chapter 6. That's chapter 6. Okay, I think we're gonna stop reading that for now. Okay, so we're about 16% of the way done. Actually, that's not so bad. It's not so bad at all. The music cut off at the perfect time too. Yeah, I see. So there's a reason why I actually had this Unity program open, because I do have a way of playing music so that I can have it fade out and crossfade between tracks. But the vast majority of the songs that I've been playing have been on just Smash custom music, so I just have to switch between tabs and all that. And wow, that only took about an hour and a half to read 6 chapters. That's not bad at all, actually. But now though, oh boy,
I think it'll be... Now I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to finish off the stream with reading one of my own stories. Yeah. Like I promised I would. I promised I would. This story is not a Pokemon story. Believe it or not. This is a Danganronpa story. Specifically, this takes place post Danganronpa 3. So if you haven't seen that yet, if any of y'all haven't seen that yet, I'd recommend you avoid this. I don't know. Or if you don't care, I don't know. But you may not actually. You may. I don't know. You may. You won't. You probably won't get the content if you haven't seen it anyway. That's fine. But yeah, Danganronpa is one of my favorite series as well. And I wrote the story back in 2017, so it'll be about 8 years ago today. 8 years ago this year, rather. And yeah, I think this one might be one of... I don't know, this is one of the favorite ones I've written, personally. I like, I like how I like how I did. I like how I did it. But we shall see how it is. So, bear in mind, this is not for the faint of heart, though. Actually, oh, that reminds me. I should probably put on the content warning. Wait, no, that's wrong content warning. That works, right? That'll work. All right, so I know this says torture and grievous bodily harm, but this is only rated T. So I mean, this is not a rated M story. So we're good. We're good. All right. So yeah, this story is Her Last Memory. And yes, I did write this. Magmarfire is one of my pseudonyms. So, here we go. Another day drawing to a close. The orange sun, further soaking itself in what could have been blood to the untrained eye, restarted its slow daily descent into the horizon below. It was earlier than yesterday, Hajime noted to himself, mindlessly counting the emerging stars. Fall must be approaching. The twilight air certainly felt colder than he'd preferred at any rate. He shivered in the cool sea breeze, absent-mindedly hugging his arms to stave off the chill that was crawling down his back. Perhaps he should have taken it as a hint to rejoin the others while they enjoyed themselves to Teru's cooking and Gundam's scenery chewing, but he couldn't bear to do so. Not while his mind was racing the way it was. His lead-laced feet dragged like bricks across the white sand, which to him had held a special sort of significance, however silly it sounded to an outside ear. It was in fact the same sand they had raced across once, on a date that had since long passed. Oh, perhaps that wasn't quite right. How could something have passed if it never even happened? It hadn't in reality, anyway. Reality itself was much crueler of a mistress. She would never again be able to enjoy the breeze on her skin, the grains of sand between her toes, or the refreshing silk of the ocean in her hair. It was cruel, he felt, that he, and the rest of his class, was given the opportunity to see the one he held most dear once more, only to see her snatched away again in such an egregious display of injustice that only the most sadistic god could have willed. To think that he was that god. His steps slowed to a depressed stroll along the beach as memories of her flickered through his mind one by one. A distant look in her eyes as they stared at each other, each as confused as the other. Her excitement when he had spoken the magic words to get her gushing about her favorite things. The ache in his thumbs when she had inevitably defeated him in yet another round of Gala Omega. The sound of the fountain behind them. Her gentle touch as she dragged him to the arcade to play that new game she wanted to play.
Her words of encouragement when he was preoccupied for the 1000th time with his then talentless existence. He scoffed loudly, somewhat hoping that someone would have noticed. Of course they wouldn't have. He made sure that he wasn't followed. He disappointedly looked back at his feet when it was clear he had snuck out too well and kept walking. How could he indulge himself in such warm memories if it was he who ensured that they would never be more than that? Memories. They were but mere constructs of sentimentality that he shouldn't have had the pleasure of playing back in his head when it suited him. How could he atone for her if he didn't subject himself to the same pain she felt in her final moments? Her pain, as his ultimate luck would have it, was very much within reach for him to review again and again if he so chose. Hence the reason he was out here. He continued his walk along the shoreline, his path now completely darkened by the gloom of nightfall. It was trivial for him to find his way in the dark, though. He'd been there plenty of times before. The dark form of the tent loomed closer. It was rudimentary work, nothing more than a tarp tied around a small cluster of coconut trees that had found a living there on the island like he had, with enough space to maybe accommodate 3 people. Lanterns inside were unlit and cool to the touch. Good, he thought, just like he left it last time. He lit the lanterns with a lighter he had taken from the supermarket on the island. The glow of the firelight was just enough to illuminate the edge of the tent, revealing only a log, a seat, and the curious hexagonal basin that he had dug, sealed, and filled with purified water. Here at last. He plopped down onto his seat and stared intently at the abominable tool he had engineered. Whether it was science or sorcery that made it tick, be it courtesy of the ultimate inventor, the ultimate spirit medium, or whatever nonsense they burned to his synapses years prior, he could not say. Nor did he especially care. He knew how to get it to work, though. It was a simple matter. Pouring his gaze into the mirror-like stillness of the water, daring not to blink as it would have vanished otherwise, he continued reeling through the memory of the girl he had loved. Her adorable smile, the way she puffed her cheeks in annoyance, the unerring focus in her eyes as her fingers tapped at buttons at lightning speed, the way she'd sleep standing up, her dying passion and devotion to her talent, the precious life leaving her eyes as her body bled out at his feet. Her face was unforgettable to him, and it would continue to be no less enchanting to him for the rest of his days. From there, all he needed was to put a name to that face, her name. The name that had the force of the 7 seas but all the beauty of 1,000 autumns. The name that lived as dreadfully short as a mayfly. The name that he vowed to immortalize as long as he lived. Chiaki Nanami. As if a fire had formed from underground, the water immediately came to a boil, steam filling the tent as quickly as the power of her name had filled his mind. The extra humidity was a tad unpleasant, but it escaped the tent as fast as it had come, soon leaving the water in the basin coming to a still calm like it had before he had disturbed it. Before long, a scene he'd seen so many times before clouded its way in the water as though an angry squid had already made its home there and was defending its turf. Shimmering on the surface was the image of an ominous corridor. Dark gray walls stretched endlessly into the darkness, with vines settled in between the ancient-looking decorative ridges, reminiscent of burnt-out runes or indecipherable hieroglyphs. The floor and ceiling looked no less out of place, stone-colored, looking weathered with time. It would have been a convincing replica of an ancient temple from a distant land or video game, were it not for the pale white light from the monitors haphazardly dotting the walls, or the manic woman taunting through them. Hajime tensed, his knuckles turning white. A blood vessel popped in his temple as he glared at the water. A woman who had stolen her from him. That woman with that stupid grin on that stupid face. He wanted to wring her neck, bludgeon her over the head with a mace, maybe cut her up into pieces and feed her to the sharks for good measure. His hatred for her knew no bounds and only grew each time he gazed into the pool in front of him. He focused his attention back to the darkness before his concentration broke. The endless darkness, deep as far as he could see. Except it wasn't as far as he could see. After all, his eyesight was unrivaled, even in the dark. It was as far as she could see, as far as Chiaki could see. It was what she felt, what she heard, what she smelled. The image of the water moved as soon as it began. He was watching what would normally have assumed to be just a video from a body camera she had on at the time. The only camera she had was her very own eyes. The same pink eyes that he desperately wished he could get lost in one last time. Instead, he consigned himself to the bleak nihilism of her final moments of life. He could make out faint words across the edges of the screen, popping in and fading in at a moment's notice. Of course, he knew by heart what they were by now, right down to the second, so he needn't have read them. He did it anyway. Pain. Woman's voice. Chiaki had clearly already been wounded by the time the video had started. From what, exactly, he was unable to tell. Likely a booby trap. The voice continued as she slowly made her way down the corridor, probably taunting her. As much as she cautiously took her time to avoid any more traps, before long, the camera soared towards the floor, stopping up right before it fell face first under the stone tile. Ah, a pressure plate. Of course. Neither a panic or a futile attempt to undo tripping it, probably both, she had stumbled forward and struggled to regain her balance. Shink! Not a moment later, large spikes popped out of the ground in retaliation. The screen flashed red, and she fell backwards. Pain. Blood. Ah! Hajime cringed, tempted to look away, but through clenched teeth, he pressed himself to watch on, barely able to ignore how much Chiaki's agonizing scream burst from the water and painfully wrung in his ears and curdled his blood. Before long, the redness subsided, and the words faded away without much consequence. Chiaki glanced at her foot, which turned into a long, disbelieving gaze. Blood gushed on the floor, and at its source was a hole, so macabre and out of place that she couldn't help but marvel at it in disturbed horror. One could almost peer through the point of entry and see the offending spike, like some sort of flesh-framed window to a torture chamber, had they such a vile fascination to do so. Hajime could feel his gorge start to rise, but he put his fist in his mouth and fought it back. The camera jerked away from the gruesome sight and forced itself back up. Hajime's heart twinged. To think that she was still determined to move. Were he in the same position, he probably would have just given up, sitting there in stunned, resignated silence. But not Chiaki. She shrugged off the obviously debilitating pain and carried on. Blood. Further down the corridor she moved, more slowly than before, the camera heaving an exaggerated bob that indicated a painful limp. Clank! She glanced behind her, and at the edge of the darkness, a large boulder emerged out of nowhere, rolling slowly, imposingly, tauntingly towards her. As quickly as she saw it, she turned back ahead of her. The camera bobbed faster and more exaggerated, as though there had been a giant holding the hallway and shaking it like a maraca. Hajime could almost hear the sound of her scared, adrenaline-filled gasps for air as she gained whatever speech she could muster. Whis, 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 whis. Scarcely had a chance to blink before large metal bearings zipped through the air towards her and went under his notice. One of them struck the camera, and he'd have expected to fall and shatter into tiny pieces of glass cracked beyond repair. Instead, there was only another red flash of light. Pain. To his relief, or his horror, she only reeled for a moment before forcing her legs to move again. She wanted to call out to her, tell her not to give up, that everything would be okay. There were a few times he did, actually. Not that it helped any. Each time he watched, inevitably, the end result was the same. Chiaki swerved to the left as she saw a blade slit out of the wall. Thanks to her quick reflexes, it had failed to take a bite out of her arm. More blades followed suit, this time attempting to saw off what had remained of her feet. As expected of the ultimate gamer, she expertly dodged each one despite the handicap. She couldn't afford to stop here, not while the boulder steadily closed in on her. Hope. Ahead of her, she could finally see where the hallway turned into a corner. How perfect, she must have thought to herself, taking care to not slip in her own blood after having come so far. She scrambled around the corner before finally taking a moment to catch her breath as the boulder rolled harmlessly past her. She looked toward the ceiling across from her side of the wall. One of the countless monitors sneered at her in its blinding white glow. The woman on the screen, beautiful, powerful, sadistic, a demonic goddess of torment if there ever was one. Her taunts reached her ears, but Hajime couldn't make out what she had been saying. Perhaps in Chiaki's panic and primal need to escape her cage, she couldn't have been bothered to commit their entire conversation to memory. Instead, she looked down the corridor once again and continued faltering down with gradually weakening steps. Pressure. In a disorienting, swift motion that almost gave Hajime whiplash, the camera flew in reverse, as if an invisible hand had snatched Chiaki and yanked her deeper into the depths of the maze. A gale rushed in her ears while she made her involuntary flight toward the end of the corridor, eventually slamming against the wall in a crash. Pain. It didn't take long for her to realize what had happened, fortunately. When she knew it wasn't her body itself that had been pinned against the wall like a housefly under a dart. She struggled, the camera violently shaking in her desperate attempt to break free. Rip! It was her trademark hoodie, he surmised. How much that must have stung, having an article that was so quintessentially hers desecrated like that. Even so, fight or flight overpowered any sentimentality she may have had to her wardrobe, and she ripped herself free without giving it a second thought. She stopped for a moment to glance at another monitor and stare upon the visage of the crazy woman who had been tormenting her so. The woman's lips moved, and yet she could discern no sound. Maybe she had been threatened, or warned of yet another impending danger to her well-being, because soon after the talking had stopped, she limped faster. 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 Crack. Pain. Ah! Of all the sound he was able to hear, it had to be from her scream again. So loud and unnerving that even Chiaki clearly could never forget how it sounded. No matter how many times Hajime watched, he couldn't get used to it. The chills running through his entire body made him violently shiver, and he almost fell face forward into the pool in a daze, so distraught that he barely caught himself. The camera froze for a few seconds while Chiaki's brain registered what had happened. She never dared to look where she had been struck, which frustrated Hajime yet at the same time was a relief. One fewer thing he had to anguish his mind with. Woman's voice. She was still taunting her, wasn't she? It angered him that he could only hear a few actual sounds. Part of him desperately wanted to hear what she had been saying, although he also figured that perhaps it was for the best if he didn't, lest he himself scream in frustration. Not that she had anything important to say, nor anyway, probably. His heart swelled with pride when he saw that Chiaki's hand, bloodied from nursing one of her other wounds most likely, angrily swiped at the crazed mad woman on the screen. Smooth, sticky, static. A reddish smear spread over the woman's face like strawberry jam on white bread. It would have looked more appetizing to her were it not for the smell of blood in her nostrils, and the bloody tint in her right eye that gave the hallway a reddish glow. You could see that she was beginning to lose focus, and yet despite her even slower pace than before, she continued down the corridor mentally undeterred. And then she saw it. The end of the corridor. Her toil had finally paid off. Hope. Ahead of her was a door. The door. Her way out. Staring at her invitingly was a door emblazoned with gold writing, promising everything she wanted. Goal. Hajime watched on with regret. Surely she must have known this was a trap. It was far too obvious, wasn't it? There had to be a secret passage she missed, or maybe a special room with a treasure, or maybe even the door to the dungeon's boss. Chiaki took the bait. Her bloody hand reached the doorknob and turned it. Click. Cool. A bright flash of light filled the screen. Hajime winced and averted his eyes to stave off the blindness. Before long, he and she could see through the heavenly rays and make out shadowy silhouettes, which had soon developed color like a photo and revealed themselves as Class 77. Smiling, happy, delighted at their beloved class rep's return. Hope. Warm. A warm, motherly form of Miss Yukizome beckoned as if to embrace her once more. It was tempting. Her lips looked like they had moved some more, but again, Hajime couldn't really tell what she had been saying, even with his ultimate lip reading. It could be she just couldn't remember. But she reached for them all the same. Certainly just happy to be reunited with them as they... Shing! Pain! A long steel pike flew right at her chest, slipping through without any resistance, and the world went gray. Her friends had gone. Miss Yukizome was no longer there. She was alone. Alone in a cold, dark, gray room. Ka-chunk, 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 ka-chunk. Despair. Pain! The screen flashed red one last time. The word pain was the only thing that remained as she blacked out, until it too eventually faded into nothingness. Pure, agonizing pain was the last memory of Chiaki Nanami. Her death hadn't been instant, he knew that much. Dying as she was, she still had enough time in her tragically short life to live a few more tragically short moments. Not that she remembered them, as the vision of the basin had revealed. The blood loss was simply too great. Hajime remembered them, though. A truly pitiful sight. A ripped and mangled ragdoll sprawled over the floor, drowning in a pool of her own blood. He couldn't have known what demon had possessed her to futilely struggle even then to get up and reach for him, but the emptiness that her soft dying whimpers left in her wake burned his eyes, gripped his heart, and choked his throat. Even today, those feelings had not subsided each time he revisited her final moments. The only thing that did was his tears. They had dried out long ago. As the water in the basin cleared to its previously pristine state, he left himself to his thoughts. Each viewing was a particularly excruciating experience for him, although like all things, repetition led invariably to numbing. Numbing, for him, was the best opportunity for him to further process anything he may have learned in each subsequent viewing. However, he'd already learned everything he needed to. He was no better off now than he was the second time he'd watched her, even the 20th. One could only watch a play so many times before they memorized each line, cue, action, and the minute flickers of spotlights. So why did he continue this fruitless pursuit? There was nothing more to learn or to be gained beyond sheer misery at the sight of seeing his best friend being killed. So why did he? Was this his way of keeping her alive? Did he, by chance, find cruel satisfaction in seeing her in pain? Did he watch so he could imagine himself in her shoes, to have him take the fall instead of her? He pondered so intently at his predicament that he didn't notice the sound of sand-softened footsteps approaching him from behind. Hajime, dinner's ready. He perked up, startled, so lost in nightmarish thoughts that he had awoken with a gasp. Instinctively, he twisted to see who had called him, although the firm and scolding yet concerned tone of the voice made it obvious. It was Mahiru. He frowned. He was certain that he wasn't followed, yet here she was, standing in front of him and absent-mindedly clutching her camera strap. Her face was void of any high-profile expression, which was quite an oddity for one so used to speaking her mind as she was. A closer look at her face, however, revealed a slight twitch in her eye and an almost unnoticeable strain in the corners of her mouth. Shock, curiosity, annoyance. Disappointed, although slightly glad for the company, he turned back to face the pool, muttering a hey before resting his chin on his hands. May I come in? The annoyance in her voice had significantly softened. All was left of the sound of concern was the sound of concern, the same tone he often heard her use around Hiyoko. Sure. Another round of footsteps and Stan approached him before the redhead awkwardly sat next to him in front of the pool. A long silence filled the tent, the only thing drowning it out being the omnipresent beat of the waves licking the shore. Part of him had hoped she would have had the courage to break the silence between them, but she seemed too interested in watching the hermit crab skitter past her foot to even bother. Eventually, though, the awkwardness was too much for her to bear. So, what are you doing here? He took a few seconds to think. Nothing in particular. He didn't bother trying to hide the lie. In fact, he held out hope that she would call his bluff and press further in that rough Mahiru way. Press further she did, although uncharacteristically gently. You sure do come in here to do nothing in particular a lot. Are you feeling okay? He grunted. Of course he wasn't. The accursed window into Chiaki's soul had left him unable to think about anything else but keeping her alive in whatever way he could, by memorizing every little detail about her execution. He was the only one who could. He feared showing anyone else's handiwork would drag them into their own depressing spirals of anguish and regret like he found himself in. Perhaps even plunging them into despair like before. He would never allow that. And so he was willing to be the sacrificial lamb to remember her for everyone else. It was a thankless job, but it was one he took without question. He owed her that much. What is this supposed to be? Mahiru asked, almost accusatorily, pointing at the pool on the ground. How is he supposed to answer that? A magical pool that showed the last memories of the dead? A high-tech piece of engineering marvel that could see the past? Any sort of answer he considered he felt was inadequate, so he simply uttered, "This is all that's left of Chiaki." Mahiru's eyes narrowed in confusion. What do you mean? And so Hajime gave her a more complicated answer, however inadequate he still felt it was in the end. That it was what could show him what his fellow classmates already saw. Sweet little Chiaki getting brutally tortured. That it showed what she felt, heard, smelled, tasted, and saw before she died. And that he had used to watch her die again. And again. And again. And again. When he was done, she sighed. To his surprise, it wasn't the annoyed sort of sigh she would usually expect to have come out of her mouth, like she had done something to validate her impression of him being unreliable as always. It wasn't the bored sigh that he would have otherwise expected if it wasn't actually a sigh of annoyance. It wasn't even a sigh of exasperation, as though she thought he was worming his way out of having to answer a question. Instead, it was sorrowful, sympathetic even. So that's what you've been doing while you were going off alone. I thought you were just getting bored with us. She lightly patted him on the back and giggled, her smile quickly turning into a frown when it was clear he wasn't going to return the laugh. Instead, she turned away, face flushed in embarrassment as she fiddled with the camera in her lap, I'm sorry, bad joke. It's fine, he croaked. He let the sounds of the ocean mend the silence that followed, although she soon became impatient with how long it had stretched on once more. Look, Hajime, she began softly, taking a few moments to compose her thoughts before she continued. I know. It's hard. It's hard for all of us. We all adored Chiaki, and not a day goes by when we don't think about her and wish she would just come back to us. She paused as though she had run out of words and had to grasp at the heavens of her mind to fill the space. Her death was hardest on you, though. I can tell. It's very clear she meant a lot to you personally. Thanks, Captain Obvious. I don't know how much consolation I could give you, but in the most twisted way, I can understand why you would do this. Then a light bulb went up in Hajime's head. The bright epiphany was such a stark contrast to whatever acidic thoughts swirled in his mind that he came close to kicking himself in frustration. Was he that focused on himself that he forgot that one simple fact about one of his friends? How could he have been so single-minded to think he was the only one who suffered a loss? He interrupted, predicting her thoughts like a mind reader. That's right. Your best friend was murdered too, wasn't she? She sobbed. Well, maybe it wasn't a sob. It was probably more of a whimper or a sad exhale. Whatever it was, it passed her lips all the same. Good night, Yubi. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, I remember all I did as part of Ultimate Despair, but even so, her particular death still weighs heavily on me. I still don't feel like I've gotten closure. And, you know, maybe this little magic pool here would provide it, even a little bit. Yet sitting here is all you do at night when you think no one's watching. So he had been followed. Damn it. Tell me, Hajime, are you feeling any better having watched her death over and over? Feeling better was never his goal, he told her. He relished in the pain, not as a masochist, but as a historian, and a toner, and as a lover. He wanted to remember. No, he needed to remember. It was the only way to respect your memory. Sure, that's all fine and good, but what would Chiaki say? Hajime averted Mahiru's gaze. How do you think she would feel if she saw you torturing yourself? He couldn't open his mouth to answer. All he could do was imagine the worried look on Chiaki's face as she hugged her arms in disturbed thought. She would probably have scolded him for doing anything that didn't make him happy, and he could almost see a tear dropping from her eye. Mahiru smiled. If Sato were here and saw me watching her death over and over, I think she would be beyond sad. I think she would want me to try to move on. Not to forget her, but also not lose myself trying to keep her memory alive. I think Chiaki would agree. Hajime, however, had been less convinced. But maybe it was only that he was projecting and wallowing in the same misery that Chiaki could never feel again. How hurt she must have felt when the one person who could have saved her simply stood there and watched. The thought further ignited his contempt for himself like a bellows. He could have saved her. He replayed those final moments in his head over and over again, analyzing each infinitesimal detail to each quarter second. He knew the labyrinth well, having had the time to roam on his own in secret underground. There was a medical facility nearby he could have used. Blood transfusions, sutures, bandages, the works. All would have been a cinch to procure or even improvise. She would have had decent odds, probably around a 60% chance to stabilize if he had been fast enough. And yet all he did was marvel at the tears streaming down his face. Do you think, Hajime countered, voice slightly cracked, Chiaki would want me to be happy when she knew that I was the one who could have saved her? The ultimate photographer hummed and thought, almost disapprovingly. Hajime half expected her to snap at him. It was usually an indication that he'd rubbed her the wrong way, something that happened a bit too often for his liking. But her self-control surprised him when, instead, she stayed composed and treated his question with the calm and tact that was due. I don't know how you can picture her as a vengeful person. If she saw all you did to wake us up despite the odds and to take the fall along the rest of us for what happened at the Future Foundation, you know, I think she would be proud of you. Hajime turned to her in surprise. Proud? Really? Mahiru closed her eyes, grinning from ear to ear. Really, really? You think I'm kidding? The possibility did cross his mind for a moment. I don't know if anyone else in our class ever told you this, but Chiaki thought very highly of you. Her thoughts returned to a time when everything was much simpler, to all the special little events and trips that their late class representative had planned for everyone. As she recounted her experiences with the boy sitting next to her, never could she remember a time that had been so full of joy and comfort when everyone she knew was wide-eyed and optimistic for their futures. As we got to know her, she started feeding us bits and pieces of her personal life, like that she made a friend outside the class one day by the fountain. Mahiru giggled. I can still remember the slightly embarrassed blush on her face when Ibuki started prodding her for details. The thought tickled Hajime too, who had briefly curled his lips into a small smile. And each time she did mention you, it was all praise. It was praise for your potential, how humble you were, and how much you cared. Although she did also mention how much you felt you were beneath the ultimate students, and she always looked so sad when she did. As he imagined the depressed look in her eyes, the smile he managed to maintain had dissipated. But then she would go back to singing your praises. Heck, she even skipped out on some class social outings to play with you. The smile returned to his face. Mahi returned to face him again. Hajime, even if you didn't save her, I don't think she would hold it against you. Not that she wanted to die or anything, but there's no way she'd peg you as a bad person. If she's watching over us, I'm sure it's with the same dazed smile we all loved. Hajime couldn't say anything. Not only was he touched that Mahiru got on her way to try to cheer him up, but he was shocked that it was actually working. It must have been weeks since he had any semblance of peace of mind or resolve to move forward toward the future like he'd originally vowed. He knew that it would only be a matter of time before the pendulum swung back and he relapsed into another spell of grieving, but he cherished the slight spark of hope for recovery while it lasted and made sure to savor it some more. Well, anyway, Mahiru pushed herself off her seat and turned to face Hajime. We should head back. Teruteru will take it personally if we get back and the food's cold. Come on. She offered him a hand, smiling warmly. For a moment, he could see Chiaki standing in front of him once more, offering her hand before dragging him to the arcade, her eyes so very clearly full of joy. He didn't hesitate. He took her hand as though it would have disappeared forever had he not done so that second, and he pulled himself to his feet. And then she was gone, leaving Mahiru in her wake, carrying on her bright smile as though she were channeling a goddess. The last tear that he had thought had already been shed months ago fell down his cheek. Thank you, Mahiru. I needed that. She turned away in a desperate yet futile attempt to hide her blush. Yeah, no problem. Well, let's go. I'm starved. Hajime took a second to put out the lanterns before closely tailing Mahiru, who was no doubt relieved to know that her stomach would finally have its fill for the night. He wondered when he'd next find the time to watch Chiaki's death again, but after what he had been told, he thought perhaps he should take a small break for now. Thanks to Mahiru, he finally realized that he could find company in those who had suffered similar losses at their own hand. She was kind enough to show him that. It would be hard to move on without Chiaki, he knew. He'd never fully recover from his loss. It would be a long, long journey that would only ever asymptotically approach inner peace. But for the first time in a long while, he finally found himself taking another step toward that goal. All he needed was a friend to give him that little boost. As they walked back to join the others, he gazed towards the sky. Tiny diamonds that dotted the black dome above them twinkled like innocent childlike eyes that had never seen strife. Save some games for me, okay? He whispered, his cheek dry once more. He'd usually not been one to believe in an afterlife or anything of the sort, but if there was one, he only wished that Chiaki was enjoying every second. He knew she probably couldn't hear him, but if Mahiru was right, she was probably still smiling down on him from those same stars.
And that's it! That was, listen, I watched the anime and it made me feel things and, I was like, I had to let it out, man. I had to let it out. Well. That was an adventure. That was an adventure. That was a little more dark than a Pokemon one. I mean, yeah, a little bit. Just a little bit. But hey. Danganronpa is from, like, mature rated game series. But Danganronpa is a mature rated game series. This is rated T. So, technically, it's a bit less dark than what fare you would be getting from Danganronpa. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, yeah, I poured my heart and soul into that story many years ago, and yeah, so yeah, that was her last memory. It's It was a story that happened. It was a story. It's not even the only story that I've written, though. I have actually written a few others. There's actually a one-shot advanced shipping fic that I have also written that I could also read. But I think I'm going to save that for another time. I'm saving that for another time. I also have a couple of Zelda fanfics that I've written as well. So I have a few things to read. A few things. But until then, I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna let all of you go. Okay, I gotta be honest, I don't know who to raid. I don't know who to raid. I guess I'll raid Dan. He's doing an archipelago right now. Yeah, what am I supposed to do? Who else is reading fanfics at this hour? I don't know, man. I just don't know. But yeah. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you've been enjoying the story so far. I hope that you've been enjoying it, at least. I am doing my best. I believe I want to say that it does get better. Because, I mean, you know, they gradually get better and better at writing as they write the thing. So, you know, you can more or less see it in real time. So, you know. All right. But yes, you have a great rest of your night. Say hi to Dan. He's building a archipelago right now. He's playing Kingdom Hearts. An archipelago with Proton John, Popsky, and Atoll. So, say hi to Dan, everybody, and I'll hope you have a great rest of your night, everybody. Till next time. Bye-bye, Turtles.